Chapter 1059 Dragon Races Test. Chapter 1059 Dragon Races Test. Long Yen was stunned. He truly did not expect that this matter would alarm the Grand Elder of the Illumination Dragon race who had not appeared for a long time. Furthermore, the most important thing was that the Grand Elder had actually made the same decision as the clan leader. They wanted Su Zimo to head to the Primordial Divine Spring to recuperate with a WRM. Thank you, Grand Elder. All the dragons fell silent, but Su Zimo was the only one who remained calm and bowed in thanks. That was the condition for him to join the dragon race to begin with. At that moment, none of the dragons in the hall could understand why the Grand Elder would make such a decision. It was not until many years later that many dragons realized what a terrifying monster incarnate the dragon race retained with that decision made today. Compared to this monster incarnate, the Primordial Divine Spring was nothing. Long Yen brought Su Zimo away. Although nothing could be seen from the dragons' expressions, they were indignant and dispersed one after another. In the blink of an eye, the 4 elders of the Illumination Dragon lineage were the only ones left in the hall. Big brother Long Emo has the bloodline of Long Ran in him. Although it's not pure, it's nothing much to let him enter the Primordial Divine Spring to heal. Elder 2 frowned. However, isn't it a little overboard for that kid to ask for the WRM to enter the Primordial Divine Spring with him? The Grand Elder smiled and asked, "Fourth, what do you think?" Although this Long Emo did not grow up in our environment, his temperament is similar to that of the dragon race. In the conversation earlier on, he displayed his courage, fearlessness, hot-bloodedness and was neither servile nor overbearing. Apart from Long Ran as a factor, I've taken a liking to him personally as well. Elder 4 said in a low voice, "I heard from Long Ran that this lad was originally from the human race. It's rare that he hasn't been tainted by the conniving nature of the human race all these years." The Grand Elder asked, "Third, let me know your view as well." Elder 3 pondered for a moment and said, "I'm fine, I believe in Long Ran's judgment. Since he has such an arrangement he must have his reasons. However..." After a brief pause he changed the topic. "That lad was a human in the past after all. It's still unknown if he can join our dragon race sincerely. There's a certain risk to your decision, big brother. According to our original decision, we still have to test him out." "Yes." The Grand Elder nodded and looked at Elder 2. Patting the latter on the shoulder, he said, "Second, you said that he was going overboard by asking for that WRM to be allowed into the Primordial Divine Spring with him. However, it was precisely because of that request that I was truly relieved and allowed him to head to the Primordial Divine Spring." Ah. Elder 2 was slightly stunned. The Grand Elder explained, "If this lad were to disregard that WRM in order to repair his body or feign civility with us, I wouldn't be able to take him in at ease. It's just as you guys are worried. After all, he was once a human and is capable of being scheming. Who knows if we'll raise an ingrate if we take him in? Who knows if he'll bite back at us one day?" Elder 2 seemed to have understood something as he pondered. The Grand Elder continued, "However, the fact that he dared to take such a risk and make this seemingly reckless request proves that this lad is extremely loyal and true. He will remember our kindness to him." No wonder. Elders 3 and 4 were enlightened. The Grand Elder smiled with a smug look in his eyes, as though he had picked up a treasure. Elder 2 laughed as well. "Big brother, it's rare to see you so happy. Do you really think so highly of this lad? Don't forget his bloodline isn't pure. You guys truly don't know much about the outside world." The Grand Elder said, "Even though I'm always in seclusion, I know about the major events that happen outside. Do you guys know what that lad just did in the cultivation world?" "What?" the 3 elders asked curiously. He killed the titular disciples of 8 human super sects single-handedly." The Grand Elder's words were shocking. The 3 elders were surprised. Elder 4 said, "It's no wonder why I sensed a sharp killing intent and an aura of invincibility from that lad. So, he actually has such terrifying combat strength. It's no wonder why he attracted the attack of a half-martial ancestor." Elder 3 nodded. Titular disciples of super sects of the human race are not easy to deal with. They can even fight against dragons of the same cultivation realm. Actually, that's nothing much. Elder 2 was indifferent and said, "If our dragon paragons of the younger generation head out, they would be able to suppress the titular disciples of the human race as well." "Foo-foo." The Grand Elder suddenly laughed. "Big brother, what are you laughing at?" Elder 2 asked. The Grand Elder said faintly, have you guys heard of the catastrophe that happened in Myriad Phenomenon City more than 100 years ago? I've heard of it. Elder 2 nodded. I heard that some treasures appeared and the god and Rakshasa race sent their clansmen and paragons in. To think that they would meet with a massive calamity and wound up killed by a monster incarnate of the human race. At that point, Elder 2's expression changed as he asked, Big brother, are you saying that this lad is the monster incarnate of the human race from back then? It's him? The Grand Elder nodded. Pust. The three elders gasped slightly. They were well aware of the strength of the god and Rakshasa race. Even their dragon race might not be able to win against the two races. Elder 3 frowned. He's severely injured this time round. I wonder how much combat strength he can recover after his injuries are healed. That's right. After all, he has lost many of the methods of the human race. Coupled with the fact that his bloodline is impure, his combat strength will be greatly reduced. Elder 2 nodded as well. Suddenly, Elder 4 asked, Big brother, do you intend to make him the young master of our Illumination Dragon lineage? The Grand Elder did not comment and said, My intentions make no difference, the key is that he has to prove himself. In our dragon race, whoever is stronger will be respected. He's an outsider. It'll be difficult for him to assimilate into the dragon race within a short period of time. Elder 4 was a little worried. A crafty glint flashed through the Grand Elder's eyes as he continued, That's why I got that WRM to head to the Primordial Divine Spring with him. Apart from giving him a favor, I wanted to incur the displeasure and resentment of the younger generation of the dragon race. He'll definitely be in trouble when he comes out of the Primordial Divine Spring. This will also be a test for him. We'll know very soon whether he's a dragon or a worm. Big brother, you sure are wise. The three elders stroked their beards and praised. This test might not be enough. The Grand Elder thought for a moment and the turbidness in his eyes had long disappeared. They shone with a crafty glint as he continued, Right, wasn't Long Yen engaged to that girl from the hornless dragon lineage previously? Since this lad is replacing Long Yan's position, he will have to take on that engagement as well. Big brother, that girl from the hornless dragon lineage has a fiery temper and dares to go against anyone. Back then she did not agree to this marriage and came over to our side to end it. If Long Yen hadn't died, something else might have happened because of this matter. Elder 4 said with a lingering fear, If that girl finds out that her fiancé was changed to a dragon with an impure bloodline, she'll definitely wreak havoc on the Illumination Dragon lineage. Isn't that perfect? Let that lad deal with it. The Grand Elder said with a smile. Big brother, you're truly the most savage. The mouths of the three elders twitched as they raised their thumbs. Chapter 1060 Primordial Divine Spring. Chapter 1060 Primordial Divine Spring. They passed through many buildings under the lead of Long Yen. Along the way they encountered many dragons with powerful auras and ferocious gazes. Clashes and fights could be seen everywhere. The bloodline of the dragon race was incomparably terrifying to begin with. Even if they were injured all over, they would recover after resting for a day or two as long as their organs were not injured. After the repeated clashes, every single dragon carried an iron-blooded killing intent that tempered their melee combat techniques. Suzimo was secretly speechless. In such a cruel environment, it would be difficult for him to not be strong. Many dragons of the Illumination Dragon lineage had normal expressions when they looked at Long Yen. However, their gazes were filled with hostility and shone with cruelty when they caught sight of Suzimo. Anyone who wanted a foothold in the dragon race would have to fight to gain it, even if they had the bloodline of the Grand Elder. To a certain extent, this was a relatively fair environment. Only in such a fair and cruel environment could a true expert be tempered. Long Imo, although you have the support of the Grand Elder, your situation is still not favorable. After hesitating for a moment, Long Yen reminded kindly, If your injuries are healed, try not to run around. Go into seclusion and cultivate first to avoid the limelight. Although Long Yen could not guess the Grand Elder's intentions, he could guess that once Suzimo came out of the Primordial Divine Spring, countless troubles would definitely come knocking. In his opinion, this young man would not be able to handle it at all. Yes, thank you for your reminder, Uncle Yen. Suzimo nodded. Before long, Long Yen had already brought Suzimo out of the region of the Illumination Dragons and entered the public area in the middle of the 6 dragon lineages. Although this was known as the Dragon Bone Valley, in reality, the area occupied by the dragon race was larger than the areas occupied by the major sects of the cultivation world. The public area in the middle was even more so, with no end in sight. The buildings that he could see were filled with an ancient aura. The habitat of the Illumination dragon lineage was filled almost entirely with Illumination dragons. In the public area, various dragon lineages could be seen everywhere. The Horned Dragon lineage wore golden robes, the Hornless Dragon lineage silver robes, and the Blue Dragon lineage green robes. Before long, Long Yen brought Su Zimo to the entrance of a cave. 2 dragons guarded both sides of the cave. The auras of the 2 dragons were similar to Long Yen. They were at the conjoint body realm as well. A dragon of the conjoint body realm could kill conjoint body mighty figures of Glass Palace with ease and even fight Mahayana patriarchs. The growth stage of the dragon race was divided into childhood, youth, adult, and peak. Typically, the strength of a childhood dragon corresponded to the chi condensation to nascent soul realm of the cultivation world. A young dragon corresponded to the nascent soul to dharma characteristic realm. An adult dragon was at the conjoint body realm. A peak dragon was at the Mahayana realm. It was clear how important this place was for 2 adult dragons to guard this cave. Long Yen took out a fiery red badge with an Illumination dragon tattooed on it. It gave off a scorching aura, and he handed the badge to the 2 adult dragons. The badge contained some information left behind by the Grand Elder. The 2 adult dragons received it and inspected it. They looked at Su Zimo with surprise before nodding. "Go on in." The moment the door opened, a rich and exuberant life force gushed out like a spring breeze. The pain on the scarlet-haired Yin spirit lessened slightly. Su Zimo took a deep breath and entered the cave. What he saw was a long corridor. The end of the corridor shone with a golden light. The deeper Su Zimo went, the more he could sense the exuberant life force coming from the end of the corridor. Before long, everything opened up before him. Su Zimo was shocked, and his eyes were filled with endless amazement. The scene before him did not seem like he was in a cave at all, but a world of its own. The vegetation was rich and lush. In the middle of a few ancient trees, there was a pool that was enshrouded with immortal chi. The spring water in the pool was golden in color with a sparkling luster. The primordial divine spring. It could regenerate flesh and revive the dead. This world exuded a pure and flawless aura of vitality. The moment Su Zimo entered, a trace of vitality entered his initially lifeless body. At the start he was a little uneasy. After all, his body had been struck by the power of a half-martial ancestor, and his life force was already severed. All his bones were shattered and his organs were crushed into sludge. Even the red-headed ghost and the Mahayana patriarch were helpless. However, the moment Su Zimo saw the primordial divine spring, he knew that it would definitely restore his body to its original state. Su Zimo hurriedly took Solitary Cloud out of his storage bag. Initially, Solitary Cloud was still unconscious. The moment he was moved here, Solitary Cloud let out a raving sound in his unconscious state. Without hesitation, Su Zimo brought his body in Solitary Cloud and leaped into the primordial divine spring. The 2 bodies were immersed in the golden divine spring, and endless life force surged into their bodies, nourishing and repairing their bodies with rich life essence. Compared to Su Zimo, Solitary Cloud's injuries were lighter. Su Zimo could clearly see the golden divine spring gushing into Solitary Cloud's chest wound within a few breaths after he soaked in the primordial divine spring. Solitary Cloud's heart was shattered by Di Yin's palm. But now, Solitary Cloud's heart was healing at a visible speed under the nourishment of the primordial divine spring. To be precise, it was reconstruction. The reconstructed heart was even stronger than Solitary Cloud's previous heart. In his chest, the broken bones were being repaired bit by bit. Specks of golden essence surged into the wound and fused into his flesh. The injuries on their bodies were healing continuously. Su Zimo moaned in comfort. After a few dozen breaths, he suddenly realized that he could control his true body of the dragon race. Su Zimo was delighted. Of course, the limbs of his body had yet to recover, and the injuries to his organs had not healed either. It would take a long time for him to recover completely. Right now, he could only do simple actions. Lowering his head, Su Zimo wolfed down a huge ball of water from the golden divine spring. The surging life essence flowed down his throat into his body and exploded instantly. The wounds on the scarlet-haired Yin spirit were healing bit by bit as well. Su Zimo felt as though he was lying on a warm bed, and the coldness in his body was dissipating bit by bit. He had never felt so comfortable before. A strong sense of fatigue surged into his heart. Ever since he came out of Thousand Demon Valley, he had been through battles such as the Thousand Crane Tea Party and the Dao Inheritance Ground. He was even hunted by a half-martial ancestor and had barely rested. At this moment he suddenly wanted to have a good rest. At the very least, this was the Dragon Bone Valley and there would be no danger here. What he wanted to do was to conserve his energy and prepare for the challenges ahead within the dragon race. At that thought, Su Zimo laid down in the primordial divine spring and fell into a deep sleep. Chapter 1061, Looking Forward to the Reunion. Chapter 1061, Looking Forward to the Reunion. Bottom of the Dragon Burial Valley. Standing in the hall, Su Zimo looked at the 2 lines of words on the wall in a daze. To become one of the greatest, you have to work on the foundation and be willing to take hardship and serve others. Once the fog fades, the radiance shall illuminate through the entire world. Before Daiyu left, she told him that if he wanted to do both immortality and demonic cultivation, he would have to experience many hardships. However, these hardships would eventually make him stronger. She divined heavenly secrets and long knew that Su Zimo would encounter a great calamity one day that would lead him to the bottom of the Dragon Burial Valley, hence the statement left behind. However, even she would not have expected that Su Zimo would return to this place 100 years later after suffering even more. Even his body was almost destroyed. Su Zimo had never regretted it. He wanted to create his own Tao. It was not only for the lives of the world but also for himself. He looked forward to his reunion with Daiyu. More than that, he hoped to be someone beyond Daiyu's imagination when he stood in front of her again. That will definitely be interesting. Su Zimo smiled gently. In his heart, he not only wanted to be praised by Daiyu, he wanted to catch sight of unprecedented joy and surprise in her eyes. A moment later, the smile on Su Zimo's face faded as he sighed. He did not know how long he would have to wait to see Daiyu. Initially, Su Zimo thought that as his cultivation increased, he would definitely be getting closer to Daiyu. However, as his cultivation deepened, he realized that Daiyu was beyond his reach. It was unknown. Although he had already entered the void reversion realm, he could not deduce or sense Daiyu's cultivation level. Was she at the Mahayana realm? The Tribulation Transcendence realm? Su Zimo shook his head slightly and denied those 2 guesses. Perhaps it might be beyond his current knowledge. Su Zimo took a deep breath and composed himself. No matter what, he had to continue on his path. He was not clear about the situation with his true body of the dragon race. Ever since his true body of the dragon race entered the Dragon Bone Valley, he could no longer sense it. This was a good situation. The 2 essence spirits cultivated separately without interfering with each other. Otherwise, they were bound to be affected if they knew everything that happened to their counterparts. Both essence spirits were Su Zimo and came from the same source. Su Zimo had a mysterious feeling that he could still establish a connection with the scarlet-haired Yin spirit as long as he wanted to. Of course, from now on he would not alarm his true body of the dragon race unless necessary. It must be the same on the other end. Although he did not know what happened to his true body of the dragon race in the Dragon Bone Valley, Su Zimo guessed that it should not be a problem. As long as he could enter the primordial divine spring and recover his physique and bloodline, he would definitely be able to gain a foothold in the dragon race with his true body. The most important thing for the black-haired essence spirit was to reconstruct his body. Su Zimo recalled what his master, Extreme Fire, had told him back in 100 Refinement Sect about the storage bag and could not help but smile bitterly. Master Extreme Fire's words came true. He truly required the storage bag. Initially, Su Zimo thought that Master Extreme Fire had a premonition. A few days ago, he found out that Monk Yuan Bei had discussed this matter with Extreme Fire when he saved the latter at the bottom of the Dragon Burial Valley. Su Zimo took out the storage bag given to him by Master Extreme Fire and carefully recalled the scene of the latter reconstructing his bones and body. He only made a move when he was absolutely certain he had no doubt about every single detail. There was a prerequisite before he could reconstruct his body. He required fire hot enough to smelt the top-grade materials in the storage bag. Given Su Zimo's current cultivation, he could not achieve that. Back in 100 Refinement Sect, Tao Lord Extreme Fire had only achieved this goal through the Earth Core Fire in the hall as well. He had to look for help. Monk Yuan Bei did not have much lifespan left and it would be best if he did not make a move. The only one who could help was the red-headed ghost. At that thought, Su Zimo carried his storage bag and walked towards the cemetery. "Lad, are you here to talk to me?" Before he got close, the red-headed ghost's voice sounded. Lad, you've already suffered so many blows at such a young age. It's only natural for you to be disheartened and take things too hard. Let me tell you, you've made the right decision to have a heart-to-heart talk with me. I've been sitting here all these years and I'm the best at giving guidance to others. The red-headed ghost started nagging again. He had been at the bottom of the Dragon Burial Valley for more than 10,000 years and he and Monk Yuan Bei were the only ones for more than 9,000 years. The most frightening thing was that Monk Yuan Bei had been cultivating in silent meditation the entire time. In other words, the red-headed ghost did not even have anyone to speak to. One could imagine how he managed to survive for more than 9,000 years. It was understandable why he was in his current state. Fortunately, Dai Yu barged into this place later on and snatched away the Siraka flower, breaking the silent meditation of Monk Yuan Bei. Otherwise, the red-headed ghost might have gone mad. Red-headed ghost, let me tell you something important. Su Zimo went straight to the point. I intend to reconstruct my body. Help me condense a ball of flames and melt some natural treasures. What's the use of reconstructing a body? The red-headed ghost pursed his lips. Let me tell you, this essence spirit of yours can just be used as a clone for casual cultivation. In any case, you still have a true body of the dragon race. The red-headed ghost wanted to turn Su Zimo into a dragon completely, but that was against the latter's bottom line. Su Zimo frowned slightly. There's no need to mention that again. Now that the scarlet-haired spirit is with the dragon race, it naturally belongs to the dragons. However, I've got my own plans for this essence spirit. You have your own plans, so why are you looking for me? The red-headed ghost raised his brow. Are you going to help? Su Zimo asked. Wow, you're threatening me? The red-headed ghost sneered. So what if I don't help? Then I won't talk to you anymore. Su Zimo said seriously. That was a most childish statement of pique that was commonly used among children. However, it was extremely lethal to the red-headed ghost. No. The red-headed ghost said hurriedly, Rascal, all you know is how to threaten me. Isn't it just condensing flames? I'll help you, all right? As he said that, the red-headed ghost flicked his finger and a small scarlet flame appeared on his fingertip, fluttering as though it could extinguish at any moment. Although Su Zimo was skeptical, he still took out a lava crystal. He controlled the lava crystal with his spirit consciousness and placed it on the small flame. Chi. A green smoke accompanied it. In the blink of an eye, that top-grade bone-tempering material was burned to ashes by that small flame. Su Zimo. Completely oblivious, the red-headed ghost boasted to Su Zimo smugly, How? The power of this flame is decent, right? Suppressing the urge to curse, Su Zimo glared and grit his teeth. Reduce the power of your flame. Sure, no problem. The red-headed ghost agreed readily. The flame dimmed significantly. Su Zimo took a deep breath and took out another lava crystal, placing it carefully on the flame. Swoosh. Instantly, a flame ignited on the lava crystal. However, the lava crystal only managed to last 3 breaths before it turned into ashes right in front of Su Zimo again. Su Zimo's face darkened. 2 top-grade treasures were burned away by the red-headed ghost just like that. Reduce the power even more. Grinding his teeth, Su Zimo spat out a few words. The red-headed ghost waved his hands repeatedly and shook his head. I can't make it go lower. This is the weakest. Chapter 1062 Green Lotus True Body. Chapter 1062, Green Lotus True Body. Su Zimo put away his storage bag and turned to leave. Su Zimo did not know if the red-headed ghost truly did not have the capability or if he was pretending to be dumb, but he no longer wanted to waste time with the latter. Hey lad, don't go. The red-headed ghost shouted from behind. Su Zimo turned a deaf ear and hurried back to the main hall, deep in thought. He had no chance of getting help. Unless he went to 100 Refinement Sect and sought the help of Master Extreme Fire. However, the North region was too far away from the Middle Continent and he was only left with a single essence spirit. It was truly extremely dangerous for him to cross a major region to reach 100 Refinement Sect. Earth Core Fire, Earth Core Fire. Su Zimo murmured softly and a thought flashed through his mind. The underground volcano beneath the Great Qian Ruins. Back when he arrived at the Great Qian Ruins, he accidentally discovered a spirit pool in an underground palace. There was a secret passage beside the spirit pool that led deep underground. His encounter with the little fox was deep underground as well. Su Zimo remembered that beneath the spirit pool was a world of lava where connate spirit fires that were treated as treasures could be seen everywhere. He had once seen a volcano spewing golden lava upstream. The temperature of that volcano was extremely high. Back in the battle for the vermilion fruit in the Great Chen ruins, he had relied on the golden lava to kill many nascent souls. Those nascent souls that came into contact with the golden lava were burned to ashes without exception. At that thought, Su Zimo left the ancient temple and leaped up, activating the Mingwang prayer beads to form a barrier of light that passed through the thick fog and arrived above the Dragon Burial Valley. Right now, his body was casually created using dermic powers. Although he could move freely, it would disperse after a few blows if he were to fight someone. Su Zimo sped in the direction of the Great Chen ruins. Before long he set foot on this land once more. Countless otherworldly soldiers were still lingering in the ruins. When they sensed Su Zimo's aura, they surged over crazily. However, they stopped in their tracks the moment they approached. Although the otherworldly soldiers did not have any intelligence, they could sense the aura of the Mingwang prayer beads and did not dare to advance, retreating gradually. He saved a lot of trouble with a treasure like the Mingwang prayer beads. Revisiting this old place, Su Zimo advanced and found the location of the underground palace based on his memories. In the battle for the birth of the vermilion fruit back then, paragons of the North region gathered and countless were buried here. Even after more than 100 years, this place was still stained with blood. It was clear how tragic the battle was back then. The surroundings were silent, desolate and terrifying. Ever since that battle back then, very few cultivators had set foot in this place. The underground palace had long collapsed and was reduced to ruins. Standing on the ruins, it was difficult for Su Zimo to find the hidden path that was buried deeply. He frowned slightly and searched the ruins repeatedly. All of a sudden, he heard the sound of flowing water in an inaudible manner. Su Zimo was invigorated and walked towards the sound. Before long he found the source of the sound of flowing water. He released his spirit consciousness slowly and delved deeper into the ruins. Soon Su Zimo's eyes lit up. Beneath the ruins, he discovered the spirit pool he had seen previously. Even though more than 100 years had passed and it was buried by the ruins, the spirit pool had yet to dry up with spring water rich in spirit chi flowing outwards. Delighted, Su Zimo followed the spirit pool and found the secret passage from before. He pondered for a moment and did not move the ruins above the spirit pool openly. Instead he dispersed his dermic powers body. The black-haired essence spirit transformed into a stream of light and created a tunnel as thick as a wrist in the ruins before entering the ground. Although the underground palace had collapsed back then, it did not bury the spirit pool. Instead there was a space left. Su Zimo found the secret passage and leaped down without hesitation. Before long he arrived deep underground. Reconstructing his dermic powers body, Su Zimo walked forward. Not long after, his eyes lit up and his vision turned scarlet. Waves of heat surged over. When Su Zimo first arrived at this place he was still at the Golden Core realm and could not even withstand the temperature outside. He even had to use protection talismans. But now he had already entered the Void Reversion realm. Although he had lost his physical body, the dermic powers body that he had casually conjured could withstand the heat of the lava. Meandering along the stone wall, Su Zimo turned a corner and saw a relatively larger piece of land in the lava ocean. Back then Little Fox's mother's corpse was there. Later on he heard from Little Fox that before she left, she pushed her mother's corpse into the lava so that it would be buried here. Su Zimo continued forward. The underground cave meandered upwards along the lava and the temperature rose continuously. Gradually, Su Zimo noticed a faint golden color floating on the surface of the lava not far away. He was almost there. After a few more turns, Su Zimo stopped in his tracks. Before him was a massive volcano. Golden lava surged at the mouth of the volcano, creating waves that gave off a shuddering aura and a scorching heat. Su Zimo frowned slightly and stopped in his tracks. Strange. Even though the temperature of the golden lava was high, it was extremely easy for him to avoid taking damage from it given his current cultivation realm. However, for some reason he felt his heart skip a beat as he stood before the volcano. Su Zimo rose slowly and arrived near the mouth of the volcano. He looked down at the surging lava with a bright gaze. He stared for a long time but could not find anything. However, that sense of trepidation gradually disappeared as well and Su Zimo decided to temper his bones and body here. Opening his storage bag, Su Zimo looked at the many top-grade spirit materials inside and paused in his actions. He sighed internally, lost in his thoughts. Even if he managed to refine his body with the best spirit materials, his body would definitely not be able to compare to the physical body that cultivated the mystic classic of the 12 demon kings of the great wilderness, drank dragon blood and possessed the divine phoenix bone. The combat strength of his true body of the dragon race would not decrease. However, on this side, his combat strength would be greatly reduced even after his body's reconstruction. Even his destiny dermic weapon, the creation green lotus, was shattered. Su Zimo sighed again as he looked at the green lotus stems and shattered lotus leaves in his storage bag. Gradually, a sliver of light shone in Su Zimo's eyes. A bold and crazy thought flashed through his mind. Initially, he wanted to use the many spirit materials given to him by Master Extreme Fire to temper his body. However, even the best spirit materials could not compare to the creation green lotus. Even the shattered stems and leaves were 100 times stronger than top-grade spirit materials. Su Zimo's gaze turned fervent as he took out the many Khanate dermic weapons that he snatched from the hands of Diin and the other titular disciples. The stem would become the bones and the leaves would become the skin. If he added these Khanate dermic weapons as well, once his physical body was reconstructed, its toughness would be comparable to Khanate Dao Lord dermic weapons. Green Lotus True Body. If the Green Lotus True Body was completed, his combat strength would not decrease at all. Chapter 1063 Unexpected Disaster. Chapter 1063 Unexpected Disaster. That thought invigorated Su Zimo. Initially he was a little sad that the creation green lotus was destroyed. Such a supreme treasure had died before it could grow. But now, if he was able to successfully temper his bones and body based on that idea, he would be able to unleash the full potential of the creation green lotus. Furthermore, the creation green lotus was not completely destroyed. At the very least, the 54 green lotus seeds were undamaged and emitted a resplendent glow. They could still release a killing technique that targeted the essence spirit like the green lotus sword. More importantly, the creation green lotus was his destiny dermic weapon. If he used the stem as the bone and the lotus leaves as the skin, his compatibility with this physical body would reach 100% without any rejection. Once this body was reconstructed successfully, it could inherit his Dao techniques perfectly. At that thought, Su Zimo's heart burned. Now that he thought about it, this calamity was definitely a blessing and not a curse for him. If he succeeded in creating the Green Lotus true body and joined forces with his true body of the dragon race, his combat strength would double. Su Zimo took a deep breath of air and prepared to begin forging his bones and body. He gathered all the lotus stems together and burned them with the golden lava in the volcano. If the lotus stem was not broken, the temperature of the golden lava would not have been able to melt it. However, now that the lotus stem had shattered into pieces and lost the power of the creation green lotus, it was gradually melting under the burning of the golden lava. Even so, it took a full day for the lotus stems to melt completely, forming a green liquid. Su Zimo rested for a moment and began to forge his bones with the green liquid. There were more than 200 bones in a human's body and they were all different in size. Forging every single bone was an extremely complicated and long process. Back then, even with Extreme Fire's attainments in weapon refinement, it took an entire 3 days to create that skeleton. Su Zimo recalled and forged at the same time. His speed was extremely slow and he did not dare to rush at all. 3 days passed. Even after expending a lot of effort, he could only create half a skeleton. However, Su Zimo's eyes shone brighter and brighter. He consumed some elixirs and rested for a while before continuing to refine. Another 7 days passed before Su Zimo stopped. In front of him stood a flawless green skeleton that was crystal clear like jade. It could be said to be a work of the gods. Every single bone had a series of patterns that seemed natural, like blooming lotuses. This skeleton was already perfect enough. However, that was not enough. Su Zimo took out the many Khanate dermic weapons in his storage bag. Diyin's Chaos Essence Bell and Dragon Battling Truncheon. Dao being Malevolent Earth's Bone Spear. Dao being Glass's Rainbow Glazed Pagoda. Monk Formless Wooden Fish and Mallet. Dao being Heavenly Dipper's Saber. Dao being Zephyr Thunder's Zephyr Thunder Hammer. These Khanate dermic weapons were the destiny dermic weapons of the titular disciples. Although all the titular disciples were dead, their essence spirit imprints were still on their destiny dermic weapons. If Su Zimo wanted to take them for himself, he had to erase the essence spirit imprints on them. However, that would require an extremely long time. For example, some of the Destiny-dermic weapons had been refined by the titular disciples for thousands of years. It was completely unrealistic for them to be erased in a short period of time. Su Zimo made up his mind and decided to smelt all the Khanate-dermic weapons into the Green Lotus skeleton. The Green Lotus skeleton that was formed would be tougher and unshakable than those Khanate-dermic weapons. Throughout history, there were extremely few cultivators who had tempered their bones and bodies. To be able to forge bones to such an extent, Su Zimo was the first person in history to achieve such a feat. For the sake of this skeleton, he had used the lotus root as the foundation and infused it with many Khanate-dermic weapons passed down from the ancient super sections. The quality of this skeleton could be imagined. He placed all the Khanate-dermic weapons together and refined them continuously with the golden lava. The first to melt was Tao being Heavenly Dipper's saber. Under the burning of the lava, the essence spirit imprints of many titular disciples dissipated rapidly. The saber was burned red and gradually broke into a few pieces, turning into dark golden liquid. Immediately after, Malevolent Earth Sect's Bone Spear, Monk Formless Wooden Fish and Mallet, the Zephyr Thunder Hammer, Rainbow Glazed Pagoda and Dragon Battling Truncheon melted one after another. Only the Chaos Essence Bell remained unaffected. Su Zimo narrowed his eyes and stared at the Chaos Essence Bell for a moment. From the looks of it, the Chaos Essence Bell was the strongest among the Khanate-dermic weapons. Back when he fought with Diin, this Chaos Essence Bell was also the reason why more than half of the Creation Green Lotus's power was contained. If this Chaos Essence Bell can't be melted, I'll put it away after the Essence Spirit imprint on it is erased and use it as a dermic weapon. That was what Su Zimo hoped. All of a sudden, a change happened. Clang. Without any warning, the Chaos Essence Bell shuddered and let out a long reverberating sound that shook one's mind. Against the sound of the bell, Su Zimo's dermic power body cracked and almost dissipated. Junior, you deserve death for destroying Chaos Essence Sect's legacy dermic weapon. An old voice sounded from the Chaos Essence Bell with endless killing intent. Right after, a phantom appeared. An old man in Chaos Essence Sect's robes stood in the cave, looking down at Su Zimo with a cold gaze and exuding a tremendous might. Against that pressure, Su Zimo could not move at all. Even with the support of the Mingwang prayer beads, it was useless. Su Zimo's body trembled slightly. He could tell that this was not the true body of a Chaos Essence Sect expert. That was merely a remnant consciousness from the Chaos Essence Bell. It was the remnant consciousness of an ancient expert from Chaos Essence Sect. After the golden lava refined Di Yin's essence spirit imprint, it alarmed the remnant consciousness. Although it was only a remnant consciousness, it was enough to kill Su Zimo. Even if Su Zimo's body was still present, he would not be able to escape, let alone the fact that he was only left with an essence spirit. The difference between them was way too great. This was truly an unexpected disaster. Su Zimo had not expected that merely refining an ownerless dermic weapon would cause such a disaster. If he was above the Great Chen ruins, the commotion here might have alerted Monk Yuan Bei and the red-headed ghost. However, this was the depths of the Great Chen ruins. Even if Monk Yuan Bei and the red-headed ghost sensed it, it would be too late. In a flash, all sorts of thoughts crossed Su Zimo's mind, but he felt a sense of helplessness. Seems like I'm destined to meet with such a calamity. In the end, I couldn't avoid it. Su Zimo sighed. In reality, the moment the bell sounded, it alerted another existence in the cave. In the mouth of the volcano within the golden lava, there was an almost transparent coffin floating. A peerless beauty laid in the coffin. She had a graceful figure and her hands were clasped in front of her chest. She was naked from head to toe and her skin was smooth like jade, looking like a fairy from the 9 heavens. The moment the bell rang, the woman's long eyelashes fluttered. A pair of beautiful eyes suddenly opened. Immediately after, the transparent coffin rose slowly and floated towards the mouth of the volcano. Chapter 1064, Expert's Awakening. Chapter 1064, Expert's Awakening. The juniors of Chaos Essence Sect are already so weak that they can't even protect legacy dermic weapons. The phantom in midair harumphed with a cold gaze. He was merely a remnant consciousness after all and did not notice that a coffin had already floated up from the volcano that spewed golden lava behind him. Even if the Chaos Essence Bell becomes an ownerless object and is buried in this cave, it can't fall into the hands of outsiders. With an indifferent expression, the phantom said slowly, "Die, Junior." The phantom reached out with a gigantic hand and grabbed towards Suzimo. All of a sudden, a loud bang sounded from the cave. Even the disheartened Suzimo was shocked. Boom. It was as though something had exploded. Immediately after, a huge wave of golden lava surged down like a tsunami and drowned the phantom in midair. Buzz. Buzz. The might of the phantom was terrifying, but it was devoured by the gigantic wave formed by the lava. In the blink of an eye, it disintegrated completely. Suzimo was shocked as he watched the lava wave surge towards him, about to drown him in an instant. Suddenly, as though it was controlled by some sort of power, the lava wave suddenly stopped in midair before dissipating slowly. Right after, Suzimo's eyes widened. Right in front of him, a transparent coffin floated up from the mouth of the volcano. The lid of the coffin had already shattered and was scattered all over the ground. Within the coffin, a peerlessly beautiful woman sat up slowly. Her figure was graceful and flawless. The peerlessly beautiful woman had a lazy expression as though she had just woken up. She caressed her forehead gently and her black hair cascaded down her shoulders like a waterfall. She exuded an alluring charm and was breathtakingly beautiful. The woman's beautiful eyes were slightly dazed as she frowned slightly. Even such a small action possessed indescribable beauty. For a moment, Suzimo forgot to breathe. Up till this point of his cultivation he had encountered countless women, a Ji Yaoxue who was noble and dignified, Demoness Ji who was like a quirky concubine, Lung Ro who was cold and refined, all of them were top beauties in the world. However, compared to the woman before him, they were slightly inferior. Even Demoness Ji's bewitchment techniques seemed inferior in front of this woman. The existence of this woman was enough to topple the world. The lava wave earlier on was clearly released by this peerless beauty. Suzimo should have expressed his gratitude immediately after being rescued. However, the manner of this woman's sudden appearance was way too shocking, causing him to freeze on the spot in a daze. Instantly, countless doubts surfaced in his mind. Who was this woman? Why was she here? When did she arrive here? What was her cultivation? Suddenly, a thought flashed through Suzimo's mind. He recalled that he should have seen this woman before. To be precise, he had vaguely seen her before. It was more than 100 years ago when he first arrived at the underground palace of the Great Qin ruins and was searching for the spirit pool above. A flowering crabapple blossomed in the middle of the pool. The spring water gushed and a misty fog spread. In its haziness, he seemed to have caught sight of a woman on the crabapple blossom. She had a graceful, beautiful body with a lazy and charming posture. When he closed his eyes and focused his gaze once more, there was nothing left on the crabapple blossom. Now that he recalled it, the woman on the crabapple blossom looked exactly the same as the peerless beauty before him. Could the woman before him be in existence from 10,000 years ago? That thought flashed through Suzimo's mind and he could not help but be shocked. Right then, the woman sighed faintly. Has 10,000 years passed? The woman's voice was sweet as well. A ridiculous thought rose in Suzimo's mind. It was as though he was already blessed to be able to listen to this woman speak. At the same time, that sigh confirmed Suzimo's guess. The woman slowly stood up from the coffin. Instinctively, Suzimo averted his gaze. She was so beautiful that he felt that it was blasphemy to look at her directly. With light steps, she arrived before Suzimo. A faint fragrance wafted over and Suzimo did not dare to raise his head. He merely stared at the woman's smooth, fair feet and lamented in silence that he had sinned. Just as he was about to remind her, the woman's voice sounded once more, "You came here more than 100 years ago." Ah. Stunned for a moment, Suzimo nodded. "Yes. I vaguely remember that you saved a little fox." The woman continued and exhaled. "Yes." Suzimo replied. "Where is she? Why isn't she by your side and taken care of by you?" The woman asked. Although Suzimo did not raise his head to look, her tone revealed a hint of displeasure. "Little Fox is safe and sound in Thousand Demon Valley." Suzimo smiled bitterly. "If she's by my side, she might have already met with misfortune." His body was crippled and Solitary Cloud was severely injured as well. If Little Fox were to follow him, she would truly have a slim chance of survival. "Yes." The woman pondered for a moment before leaving Suzimo. "Senior." Suzimo raised his head and shouted hurriedly when he saw that the woman was still oblivious. "Yes?" The woman turned slightly, revealing half of her perfect side profile. "Senior, you're..." Su Zimo hesitated for a moment and did not know what to say. The woman was stunned for a moment but came to a swift realization. "Damn it!" she hollered softly and her figure flashed. Suddenly, she appeared in front of Su Zimo and extended 2 fingers, piercing towards his eyes. She wanted to gouge his eyes out. It was too fast. Su Zimo could not react at all. His vision blurred and a peerless face had already arrived before him. A look of shame and anger flashed through the depths of the woman's eyes as she extended her finger and hovered motionlessly in front of his eyes. Pausing for a moment, the woman retracted her finger slowly, perhaps because she realized that Su Zimo only had a dermic power body without any eyes or because she thought of something. "I'll leave those eyes on you first," the woman said coldly. "I'll dig them out after you reconstruct your body." With that said, the woman put on her robes and took light steps, disappearing before Su Zimo in the blink of an eye, leaving behind a faint fragrance. Chapter 1065 Rebirth. Chapter 1065, Rebirth. Although the woman had already left, Su Zimo still stood on the spot, lost in his thoughts for a long time. Why was Little Fox the first person this woman asked after waking up? What was her relationship with Little Fox? Or rather, what was her relationship with Little Fox's mother, the fire fox who died here? Suddenly Su Zimo recalled something. Back when he carried Little Fox and leaped into the bottom of the Dragon Burial Valley, the first time he met Monk Yuan Bei, the latter said something to him. "That little fox, take good care of her. Don't let her suffer." At that time, Su Zimo could tell that the old monk hesitated as though he had something to say. However, when he wanted to ask, the old monk had already changed the topic and the matter was carried over. Now that he thought about it, the old monk should know about the relationship between this woman and the little fox. There was a high chance that what he did not say back then was related to this woman. The reason why this woman saved him was most likely because of Little Fox. If she saw that Little Fox had suffered or was living a bad life, this woman might really come back to settle things with him. Su Zimo shook his head and put those thoughts aside for the time being, continuing to temper his bones. Without the power imprint of the remnant consciousness, the chaos essence bell gradually melted under the heat of the golden lava and fused with the solution of the other Khanate dermic weapons. Su Zimo applied the solution to the jade-green skeleton at the side bit by bit. The skeleton gradually gained a layer of dark gold color and a metallic texture appeared, making it even more indestructible. After 3 days, Su Zimo's many Khanate dermic weapons had already fused with the green lotus skeleton. He melted the lotus leaves once more and enveloped the green lotus skeleton, forming a layer of skin. Success. Although he had yet to nurture his bloodline and organs, Su Zimo could already sense a mysterious connection between him and the skeleton before him. Su Zimo brought the skeleton with him and returned above. He poured all the spirit herbs and elixirs in his storage bag into the spirit pool. Instantly, rich life force burst forth from the spirit pool and many spirit materials rose and fell within, turning into surging life force that fused into the water. Without any hesitation, Su Zimo placed the green lotus skeleton within. The black-haired essence spirit entered its glabella and took over the consciousness, sinking into the bottom of the spirit pool. An endless stream of life force surged into the green lotus skeleton. At the same time, Su Zimo channeled dermic powers with his essence spirit and the skeleton vibrated continuously. Initially it was only the sound of bones shuddering. However, as time passed by, the sound of water flowing could be heard from within the skeleton. Splash! His marrow flowed and blood was swapped. Gradually, pink membranes that were as thin as cicada wings appeared on the green-gold skeleton. Time passed by slowly and flesh began to grow on the membrane, gradually filling up. The outline of Su Zimo's face gradually became clearer. The embryonic form of his organs had already been formed within his body. At the bottom of the spirit pool, a green-gold skeleton laid motionlessly. However, the life force within the skeleton was getting stronger. The entire spirit pool almost formed a vortex. The skeleton was like a black hole that devoured all vitality. At that moment, no one in the cultivation world knew that beneath the ruins of Tianhuang Mainland's north region, the #1 monster incarnate that had caused countless paragons to tremble in fear was experiencing a rebirth. Both true bodies were undergoing a rebirth. A month later. Under the cover of the Great Qian ruins, there were no ripples in the spirit pool and it was filled with withered leaves and spirit herbs. The spirit pool had not dried up for 10,000 years and was filled with spirit chi. However, after just a month there was no longer any spirit chi in the spirit pool and it was a dead cesspool. All of a sudden, ripples appeared on the initially calm water surface. A figure rose slowly and became clearer. Swoosh! The sound of water echoed as a figure broke out of the water and stood in midair. It was a perfect body with a slender, streamlined figure. Its skin was tender like a newborn baby. The man's black hair hung down and he had a clean, fair face. He had delicate features and his eyes were deep and bright. It was Su Zimo who was reborn. Su Zimo lowered his head and looked at his body with a hint of joy in his eyes. Although the bloodline and strength of his green lotus true body was far inferior to his dragon true body, it was sufficiently tough and unshakable. A grade 6 creation green lotus could fight against a Khanate Dao Lord dermic weapon. Right now, the skeleton formed from the lotus stem and many Khanate dermic weapons was almost equivalent to a Khanate Dao Lord dermic weapon. Furthermore, his skin was created with the leaves of the creation green lotus. Even if he stood motionlessly on the spot, a void reversion dermic weapon would not be able to penetrate his body. It was even more impossible to injure his tendons and bones. Su Zimo put on his green robes once more and tore through the ruins towards Dragon Burial Valley. He intended to enter seclusion at the bottom of the Dragon Burial Valley for a period of time. He had almost no rest after the consecutive battles. It was time for him to stop fighting and let things settle down. Now that he was at the Void Reversion Realm, he had fused his immortal cultivation techniques, the Purple Thunder Manual and Green Thunder Manual, obtaining the complete Great Void Spirit Refinement section. After cultivating this immortal cultivation technique, his combat strength would increase once more. After browsing through the Void Reversion Sutras of Daming Monastery and Fahua Monastery at the bottom of the Dragon Burial Valley, his combat strength would increase further. There were also top-tier dermic arts like the Heaven-Slaying Sword art. There were many things he had to cultivate in this seclusion. In the entire cultivation world, almost everyone thought that Su Zimo, who had lost his body, the creation Green Lotus and Divine Phoenix Bone, would definitely fall from grace and lose his glory. He might not even be a match for ordinary paragons of the Void Reversion Realm, let alone titular disciples. However, no one knew that the day Su Zimo came out of seclusion would be the day the #1 monster incarnate of history returned. Even if he were to face many more titular disciples, he was still strong enough to suppress all of them. Arriving at the edge of Dragon Burial Valley, Su Zimo leaped down. This ravine was filled with many terrifying powers. However, this time round, Su Zimo did not circulate any dermic weapons and allowed the mixed powers to surge through his body. The Green Lotus true body was completely unharmed. Boom. In the blink of an eye, Su Zimo had already fallen to the bottom. He was about to return to the ancient temple when he paused and frowned. There were many legends about the Dragon Burial Valley. The most terrifying thing was that a conjoint body mighty figure entered and did not manage to come out alive. Initially, Su Zimo thought that those cultivators were killed by the terrifying and chaotic energy field of power above. But now he gradually realized that something was amiss. The power above could not even rattle his Green Lotus true body. How could it kill a conjoint body mighty figure? Who killed the fallen conjoint body mighty figure in the legends? Who killed the cultivators who fell in the Dragon Burial Valley in the legends? Was it Monk Yuan Bei or the red-headed ghost? Although the two of them did have the ability, it seemed like they had no reason to kill anyone. Chapter 1066, Expert from 10,000 Years Ago. Chapter 1066, Expert from 10,000 Years Ago. Su Zimo turned around slowly and looked at the valley behind him. He suddenly recalled something. Back when he first arrived at the bottom of the Dragon Burial Valley, he wanted to see what was at the bottom of the valley and followed the cliff into the depths of the valley. The valley meandered and before long he saw a pile of corpses. Later on he was haunted by evil ghosts and almost died. Thankfully Mingzhen arrived in time and saved him. After that, he had not been to the end of the valley. Now that this question flashed through his mind, Su Zimo pondered for a moment before continuing along the craggy stone wall towards the depths of the valley. Before long he saw the scene from before once more. Corpses were strewn everywhere. In fact, some of their bodies were perfectly preserved for 10,000 years without rotting. A few drops of fresh blood were splattered on the walls around him. Back then, the energy contained within those few drops of blood nearly killed Su Zimo. But now, when Su Zimo's gaze landed on the few drops of blood, he only felt a slight discomfort before he adapted to it. He paused for a moment before continuing forward. All of a sudden, a gust of cold wind blew. A woman with disheveled hair and white robes that were stained with blood appeared behind him. Her eyes were blind and she stuck out her scarlet tongue. More than 100 years ago, his cultivation was crippled and he was almost killed by this evil ghost. But now that he was at the void reversion realm with the title of Tao Being, he was considered an expert in the cultivation world. How could he be injured by a mere evil ghost? Humph! Su Zimo did not even turn back as he hollered, "How dare you show yourself? I'll help you reincarnate today." Whoosh! The Mingwang prayer beads on his left wrist shone brightly and enveloped the white-robed female ghost instantly. Endless golden light pierced through the white-robed female ghost's body like sharp swords, creating holes. Blood flowed out of the white-robed female ghost. The malevolent chi and the evil ghosts condensed here had flesh and blood. Ah! The white-robed female ghost let out tragic cries and struggled within the golden light before returning to silence. A soul wisp reincarnated and dissipated into the world. Stepping on the corpses, Su Zimo continued forward. After this short exchange, there were no more evil ghosts that dared to come out. Before long, Su Zimo stopped in his tracks. He was already at the end of the valley ahead. Along the way there were corpses everywhere. He did not know how many cultivators were buried here in that battle back then. The aura was murderous. Su Zimo's gaze shifted to a gigantic pit not far away. It was nothing much for a gigantic pit to appear within the white bones. However, the pit looked strange. The soil on the surface of the pit was slightly moist, as though it was soaked in blood and was dark red. It was as though the gigantic pit was initially filled with fresh blood. However, as time passed by, the fresh blood had dried up, leaving behind such a deep pit. Suddenly, a vague thought flashed through Su Zimo's mind. However, when he wanted to capture it, the thought disappeared. There were no other oddities in the vicinity. Su Zimo shook his head and turned to leave. Before long he returned to the ancient temple. He headed straight for the cemetery in the backyard of the main hall. Coincidentally, Monk Yuan Bei was there as well, chanting sutras silently to purify the souls in the cemetery. When he saw Su Zimo's return after reconstructing his body, Monk Yuan Bei smiled and nodded. Tiske, this body is truly not bad. The red-headed ghost's voice sounded from the depths of the cemetery. Such a praise from the red-headed ghost was proof of how strong the Green Lotus true body was. Su Zimo hesitated for a moment and decided to reveal the encounter with the woman at the bottom of the Great Qian ruins. "Master, do you know who that woman is? If I'm not wrong, she should be Consort Yu of the Great Qian Empire back then." Monk Yuan Bei sighed gently. "She's probably the only person left from the Great Qian Empire." "Consort Yu?" Su Zimo muttered softly. When he thought about that woman, she possessed fair, cold skin that was indeed breathtaking like jade. Monk Yuan Bei said, "Consort Yu was originally a mortal, but she was extremely beautiful and had a fairy-like appearance that could topple countries and cities. When the emperor of the Great Qian Empire met her, he was shocked and invited her into the palace to be conferred the title of Consort Yu. From then on, all the concubines paled in comparison to her. Although she was conferred as a consort, he did not dare to offend her at all and treated her with respect. He hoped that one day Consort Yu would fall in love with him. The Great Qian Empire was vast and was considered the largest faction in the north region back then. Within its territory, there were 2 Buddhist monasteries, Daming Monastery and Fahua Monastery. The Emperor of Great Qian could be considered as the person with the most authority back then. Even so, he could not obtain the heart of Consort Yu. Monk Yuan Bei said, "Consort Yu resided deep in the palace and was unwilling to fight with the other concubines, so she was alone the entire time. Afraid that she might be bored, the Emperor of Great Qian captured a spirit fox to accompany her." The mention of that had Su Zimo's heart skipping a beat. As though he could read Su Zimo's mind, Monk Yuan Bei nodded. The fire fox that died beneath the Great Qian ruins was the spirit fox that accompanied Consort Yu. Consort Yu had an extremely close relationship with the spirit fox and Little Fox was the latter's child. That was why I reminded you not to let Little Fox suffer. Suddenly Su Zimo was enlightened. Back when the spirit fox died and Consort Yu woke up, she felt guilty towards the latter and shifted that guilt onto Little Fox. In her heart, Little Fox probably became her only kin. Su Zimo asked, "Since Consort Yu is immortal, how is she so strong?" Monk Yuan Bei said, before entering the palace, Consort Yu was immortal. After entering the palace, she had the chance to come into contact with many cultivation dermic formulations before realizing that she had a spirit root and was extremely talented. She advanced to the conjoint body realm in just 2,000 years. Pust. Su Zimo took a deep breath. Conjoint body realm cultivators had a lifespan of 20,000 years. To be able to step into the conjoint body realm in 2,000 years was a terrifying cultivation speed. Pondering for a moment, Su Zimo asked, when Consort Yu's cultivation advanced to that stage, it was even more unlikely for her to accede to the Emperor of Great Qian, right? Monk Yuan Bei nodded but shook his head. I'm sure Consort Yu was touched by the fact that he waited for her for 2,000 years. Monk Yuan Bei said, otherwise, given her cultivation and strength, even the Emperor of Great Qian might not have been able to stop her if she wanted to leave. What happened later on? Su Zimo asked. Monk Yuan Bei was silent for a moment as a look of sadness flashed through his eyes. Later on, the Emperor of Great Qian did something that incurred the wrath of the heavens and the hatred of humans, causing Consort Yu to give up on him entirely. That incident led to the catastrophe 10,000 years ago and the subsequent destruction of the Great Qian Empire. Chapter 1067, Secret of the Catastrophe. Chapter 1067, Secret of the Catastrophe. What? Su Zimo could not help but ask. Monk Yuan Bei said in a low voice, the Emperor of Great Qian was the reason why the Great Qian Empire was able to dominate the North region. However, as his power expanded, the Emperor's ambitions grew as well. Towards the later stages, Emperor of Great Qian was already showing signs of turning into a fiend. 10,000 years ago, under the suggestion of the Empire's advisor, he wanted to refine the blood of the 10,000 races as a sacrifice to the heavens. It was a massive deal to sacrifice the blood of the 10,000 races. Su Zimo was shocked. It was a heinous, atrocious crime. Naturally, the two Buddhist monasteries, Daming Monastery and Fuhua Monastery, objected to it. However, at that time the Emperor of Great Qian was obstinate and arrogant. He could not listen to anything and insisted on the sacrifice to the heavens. Monk Yuan Bei said, given the authority of the Emperor of Great Qian back then, there wouldn't be much of an obstruction even if he wanted to obtain the blood of the 10,000 races in the North region. However, he was still unsatisfied. Although he gathered the blood of the 10,000 races, he lacked the blood from the supreme among them. When he heard that, Su Zimo gradually came to a realization. The supreme of the 10,000 races was naturally the dragon race. The sound of heavy chains echoed from the depths of the cemetery. Even after 10,000 years, the red-headed ghost still could not calm down upon hearing this matter. Monk Yuan Bei sighed. Back then, that divine dragon was in its childhood stage and was playful. He snuck out of the Dragon Bone Valley and arrived at the habitat of humans. Back in the North region, apart from the Dragon Bone Valley and a few other places, the entire world was the territory of the king. The moment the young dragon left the Dragon Bone Valley, he was already targeted by the Great Qian Empire. Right then, a tall figure stood up from the depths of the cemetery and walked slowly towards Su Zimo and Monk Yuan Bei with a pained expression. The red-headed ghost grit his teeth. Yen'er lost his mother when he was young, but he had a pure heart and lacked the bloodthirsty nature of the dragon race. At that time, there was a great drought in the western border of the Great Qian Empire and the families there had no harvests at all. They were starved to death, but no one in the empire paid attention to them. Yen'er could not bear it and secretly cast a dermic art to send down rain showers to save countless lives. At that point, the red-headed ghost's eyes turned red as he said hatefully, however, his actions only served to agitate the Dog Emperor even more. He felt that his authority was being challenged and captured Yen'er into the palace. The red-headed ghost shuddered and could not continue. Given Emperor of Great Qian's authority back then, one could imagine how much torment this young dragon would suffer in the palace. Monk Yuan Bei continued, at that time, even the citizens of the Great Qian Empire went into a frenzy, thinking that their emperor could reign over the 10,000 races and rule over Tianhuang mainland. In the palace, no one dared to go against the emperor's authority. Consort Yu was the only one who stood out. She had never pleaded for anything from the Emperor of Great Qian. However, at that moment, she beseeched him to let the young dragon and the 10,000 races off. Su Zimo could guess the outcome even without Monk Yuan Bei saying it. The Emperor of Great Qian did not agree. That young dragon also died within the palace. It was also because of this that the red-headed ghost caused the capital to be ruined into ashes overnight with countless lives lost. Su Zimo glanced sideways and his heart skipped a beat. Unknowingly, the red-headed ghost who was always laughing and scolding was already in tears. No matter how many people he killed, his child would never return. Nobody could understand his pain. When Su Zimo heard of this matter for the first time, he abhorred the evil dragon that destroyed the great Qian Empire, 2 Buddhist monasteries and countless lives. Even later on, when he guessed that the red-headed ghost was that evil dragon, he did not have a good impression of the latter. It was only now that he realized that the red-headed ghost was to be pitted as well. The final bit of resentment he had towards the red-headed ghost had vanished as well. If Xiaoning were to suffer such a situation, he would probably do something even crazier than the red-headed ghost. The originator of this calamity was not the red-headed ghost to begin with, but the Emperor of Great Qian. He ruled over the North region and was arrogant and domineering. He thought that he could suppress the 10,000 races and even trample the dragon race beneath his feet. However, he did not expect to provoke a terrifying existence that he could not withstand. The arrogance and conceitedness of the Emperor of Great Qian implicated the citizens of the capital, and countless living beings were buried with him. Monk Yuan Bei thought for a moment and said, "After that, Consort Yu gave up completely and sealed herself in the glass coffin. She sank into the depths of the ground and fell into a long slumber with only that firefox to accompany her underground. 10,000 years of companionship was way too lonely. Finally the firefox could not take it anymore and sneaked out. When it returned, it was already pregnant." Su Zimo already knew what happened after that without Monk Yuan Bei saying it. The firefox's motive might have been simple. She merely wanted to give birth to a child to accompany her, or perhaps to continue protecting Consort Yu. Unfortunately, when she ran out that time, she exposed her tracks and was targeted by the crocodile demon. Su Zimo had not expected that the woman who walked out of the volcano would be involved in the secret of the catastrophe that happened 10,000 years ago. After a long silence, Su Zimo asked, "Why were Daming Monastery and Fahua Monastery a Euro? Our 2 Buddhist monasteries have an undeniable responsibility for this matter as well." Monk Yuan Bei replied, "The Emperor of Great Qian wanted to offer the blood of the 10,000 races as a sacrifice to the heavens and even captured a young dragon into the palace alive. The patriarchs of our 2 Buddhist monasteries were in seclusion and did not appear. By the time the red-headed ghost appeared and destroyed the capital, it was already too late for us to stop it. It was easy to imagine that the battlefield at that time would definitely be a scene of misery with blood flowing everywhere. No matter the reason, the 2 Buddhist monasteries would definitely stop the red-headed ghost from killing. On the other hand, the red-headed ghost had lost his beloved son and his rationality. Anyone who tried to stop him would definitely be slaughtered by Himuro. At this point, this catastrophe was inevitable." Su Zimo furrowed his brows slightly. For some reason, he had an indescribable feeling in his heart. It seemed like everyone in the catastrophe was innocent. It was the same for the red-headed ghost, his child, Daming Monastery, Fahua Monastery and the Great Qian Empire. Even the Emperor of Great Qian might have been innocent. Every single person in faction was like a puppet with an invisible thread behind them manipulated by someone. Su Zimo still had many questions. For example, why wasn't the red-headed ghost dead? Why was he imprisoned here? Furthermore, it was a symbolic imprisonment and the chains on his body were merely decorations. Why did the entire cultivation world think that the red-headed ghost was dead? What did this have to do with the patriarch of the D clan? Furthermore, for the past 10,000 years, who was the one who killed the cultivators who entered the bottom of the Dragon Burial Valley? Were they all just legends? Su Zimo did not believe that. For the past 10,000 years, there must have been many cultivators who could not help but enter the bottom of the Dragon Burial Valley out of curiosity and greed. However, more than 100 years ago when Su Zimo jumped down, there were only 3 people at the bottom of the valley: Monk Yuan Bei, the red-headed ghost and Mingzhen. If those people were already dead, how did Mingzhen survive? Su Zimo felt that there was an extremely crucial lead that was missed out. Chapter 1068 Reappearance of the Blood Face. Chapter 1068 Reappearance of the Blood Face. Su Zimo frowned deeply, but his thoughts were getting more and more chaotic. "I have a question that may be somewhat bold, but why aren't you dead?" Su Zimo looked at the red-headed ghost and asked softly in a slightly apologetic manner. The red-headed ghost caused the destruction of the Great Qian Empire and massacred countless living beings while destroying Daming Monastery and Fahua Monastery as well. Even if he was taking revenge for his beloved son, such a heinous crime was unforgivable. How could he have survived the catastrophe 10,000 years ago? The strength of the red-headed ghost was indeed terrifying. With his strength alone, he could annihilate the flourishing Great Qian Empire overnight and even destroy 2 super sects. However, based on the situation back then, the red-headed ghost should have been suppressed. How could he still be alive under such circumstances? Monk Yuanbei looked at the red-headed ghost. After this short period of time, the red-headed ghost seemed to have calmed down. The red-headed ghost had a proud expression as he said slowly, "At that time, none of the experts of the Great Qian Empire, Daming Monastery or Fahua Monastery were my match. Even a Mahayana patriarch was no match for me." Back then Yan Beichen had mentioned this to Su Zimo. Yan Beichen had once said that the combat strength of an ancestral dragon was comparable to the emperor of the human race. It was clear that he was not lying. After a huge battle, emperors of the human race were finally alerted and the Dharma Emperor of Fahua Monastery rushed over. At the mention of the Dharma Emperor, the red-headed ghost retracted the pride in his eyes and said with a solemn expression, "Back then no one could stop me, not even emperors of the human race. I fought a huge battle with the Dharma Emperor and both of us were severely injured. It was an internecine outcome." After a slight pause, he frowned slightly with a cold harumph. "When I was at my weakest, the patriarch of the D clan appeared and ambushed me while I was severely injured. It was easy to imagine how much danger he faced after he was severely injured in the battle against the Dharma Emperor and ambushed by a Mahayana patriarch thereafter. It was no wonder why the red-headed ghost hated Chaos Essence sect and the D bloodline. More than a month ago, not only did he severely injure the D clan's half-martial ancestor, he even killed that conjoint body mighty figure of Chaos Essence sect. However, from the perspective of Daming Monastery and Fahua Monastery, the patriarch of the D clan's actions could be considered as helping them. That was the reason why Monk Yuanbei did not stop Diyin from coming to the Dragon Burial Valley to read the mystic Dharmic Lotus Sutra more than 100 years ago. The red-headed ghost continued, "I fought here consecutively and turned the world upside down. I fought against the Dharma Emperor and was severely injured. Later on, I was severely injured by the patriarch of the D clan and would have died. Everyone who witnessed that thought that I was dead for sure. However, no one expected that the Dharma Emperor would hide the truth from all the cultivators and made a decision for me to survive." At the mention of that, the red-headed ghost's eyes were filled with endless emotions and respect. Given his haughty nature, it was truly rare to see a hint of respect in his eyes. The red-headed ghost said, "To be precise, the Dharma Emperor sacrificed himself to let me live." Monk Yuanbei sighed. The Dharma Emperor was in his later years and did not have much lifespan left. Therefore, he sacrificed himself and released supreme dharmic powers to save the red-headed ghost and forcefully extend the latter's life. "Why?" Su Zimo asked instinctively. The red-headed ghost's expression dimmed as he lowered his head. "I asked the same question back then. I still remember every single word that the Dharma Emperor replied." Su Zimo listened intently. "Patron Long Ran, you're not to blame for this catastrophe. You're also a victim. The reason why I saved you is because I hope that the dragon race won't start a war with the cultivation world of the North region because of this. I hope that this matter will come to an end and that there won't be any more killing in the North region." Su Zimo was stunned and his eyes were filled with endless shock. He turned around and looked into the depths of the cemetery at the little mound that the red-headed ghost often guarded. A wooden board erected by the little mound had the words, "Dharma Emperor," written on it. In Su Zimo's eyes, the wooden board suddenly appeared so sacred and tall, emitting a Buddha light that could purify the world. That was the true compassion of the Buddhist monasteries. That was the true magnanimity of an emperor of the human race. Even though the red-headed ghost committed such a heinous crime, as an emperor of the Buddhist monasteries, he still chose to forgive. He even sacrificed himself to avoid a greater catastrophe. Monk Yuanbei said, although the Dharma Emperor was in his later years, he had 10,000 years of lifespan remaining. Yet, he said that even if he took the final step forward, he might not have been able to withstand the might of the heavenly tribulation. As such, he might as well end his life earlier and save countless lives along with it. Even though he was in his later years, he still had a lifespan of 10,000 years. However, the Dharma Emperor gave up his 10,000 years of lifespan to save the red-headed ghost in exchange for peace in the North region. Monk Yuan Bei said, the Dharma Emperor was right. After the news of the red-headed ghost's death spread, the dragon race army arrived and wanted to massacre the cultivation world of the North region. However, they were persuaded to retreat by the red-headed ghost. From then on, the red-headed ghost stayed in the Dragon Burial Valley and accompanied the tombs in the cemetery with chains around his body, repenting sincerely. Su Zimo sighed internally. The Dharma Emperor had not only saved the red-headed ghost's life, he had also saved his killing intent. If not for the Dharma Emperor's choice, the red-headed ghost would have died and the dragon race army would have descended, clashing with the entire cultivation world of the North region to take revenge. At that time, it would most likely not be a catastrophe for the Great Qian Empire but for the entire North region. Su Zimo could deeply sense that there was a powerful mastermind behind all of this. If not for the Dharma Emperor, the catastrophe of the North region might even develop into a catastrophe in the entire Tianhuang mainland. At that time, everything would be irreversible. Who was the mastermind? D Clan's patriarch. If not for the Dharma Emperor, the red-headed ghost would have been killed by the ambush from the patriarch of the D Clan. The consequences would have been unimaginable. However, Su Zimo had a vague feeling that while the patriarch of the D Clan may have played an important role in this, he was not the true mastermind that manipulated the entire catastrophe. Someone else had instigated this entire catastrophe. After pondering for a long time, Su Zimo suddenly asked, Master, for the past 10,000 years, countless cultivators have entered the bottom of the Dragon Burial Valley and died. Do you know about it? I did not initially. Monk Yuan Bei shook his head. Su Zimo's heart skipped a beat as he understood the meaning behind Monk Yuan Bei's words. Monk Yuan Bei continued, ever since that female patron descended to this place more than 100 years ago, I realized that apart from me and the red-headed ghost, there's another terrifying existence hidden at the bottom of the Dragon Burial Valley. At that point, Su Zimo suddenly felt chills run down his spine. The female patron Monk Yuan Bei spoke of was obviously Daiyu. However, who was that terrifying existence other than Monk Yuan Bei and the red-headed ghost? That terrifying existence is hidden extremely secretly deep in a pool of blood beneath the Dragon Burial Valley. Even the red-headed ghost and I could not sense it. Monk Yuan Bei said, that female patron was the one who captured him. Even after spending 10,000 years at the bottom of the Dragon Burial Valley, Monk Yuan Bei and the red-headed ghost did not know that there was a third person. Who was it? Su Zimo asked. I don't know. I only saw a blood-colored human face appear above the pool of blood the moment the female patron attacked. Monk Yuan Bei said. Chapter 1069, Thousand Demon Tribulation. Chapter 1069, Thousand Demon Tribulation. When he heard that, Su Zimo's heart skipped a beat and his expression changed. The blood-colored human face. Su Zimo's first thought was of the blood-colored human face that appeared in the Thousand-Year Blood Sea in Thousand Demon Valley. No wonder he felt a sense of déjà vu when he saw the blood-colored pit at the bottom of the Dragon Burial Valley. That was because the blood-colored pit was originally a blood lake. However, 100 years later the blood lake dried up. Su Zimo still had a lingering fear when he recalled what he experienced in the Thousand-Year Blood Sea back in Thousand Demon Valley. The situation back then was extremely dangerous, or rather, sinister. The 7 high-level fiend demons that were equivalent to Dharma-characteristic Tao lords of the human race were killed easily by the bubbles that floated out from the bottom of the lake. Coincidentally, despite the massive amount of bubbles, none of it landed on him. Although he could not be sure, he could vaguely guess that the bubbles were most likely created by the blood-colored human face hidden in the depths of the Blood Sea. However, at that time, Su Zimo did not understand why the blood-colored human face wanted to save him. Now he thought of a possibility. Could it be because Daiyu did not kill the owner of the blood face but instead let him off? Therefore, the reason why the owner of the blood face saved Su Zimo might be because the former could sense that he was related to Daiyu? Su Zimo asked, was the owner of the blood face released? Of course not. Monk Yuan Bei shook his head. That female patron only left behind this sentence. To think that there's an evil being like you in this mainland that cultivates by devouring bloodlines, you deserve to die. Thereafter, the owner of the blood face was killed? Su Zimo asked. Monk Yuan Bei nodded. With that, the possibility that Su Zimo thought of earlier on was overturned. If the owner of the blood face was dead, who was the blood-colored human face back in Thousand Demon Valley? Why did that blood-colored human face help him? What was the connection between the two blood-colored human faces? If not for the female patron, we wouldn't have realized that such a terrifying existence was hidden beside us. Monk Yuan Bei sighed softly. It was only at this moment that Su Zimo finally understood why Monk Yuan Bei helped him instead of trying to settle scores with him, despite the fact that Dai Yu snatched away the utmost treasure of the Buddhist monasteries, the Siraka flower, to implant on him. It was not because Monk Yuan Bei was fearful of Dai Yu. It was because Dai Yu's attack was equivalent to saving Monk Yuan Bei and the red-headed ghost. The red-headed ghost said, "It's also because of what the red-robed woman said after her attack that we realized that the catastrophe 10,000 years ago was not a coincidence. The owner of the blood face should be the mastermind behind the catastrophe. He was the one hiding in the dark, manipulating us like puppets." Su Zimo said in a low voice, "There's a high chance that the owner of the blood face was the advisor of the Great Qin Empire." "Yes." Monk Yuan Bei replied, "After that catastrophe the advisor disappeared and no one knew where he was. He was the one who instigated the Emperor of Great Qin to cause this catastrophe. Due to that catastrophe the Great Qin Empire was destroyed and the Emperor of Great Qin died. The red-headed ghost lost his beloved son and nearly died. As a result, he restricted himself to the bottom of the Dragon Burial Valley to repent. The two super sects of Daming Monastery and Fahua Monastery were annihilated as well. In the entire catastrophe, the only beneficiary was the owner of the blood face, who cultivated by devouring bloodlines at the bottom of the Dragon Burial Valley. The strange blood-colored human face flashed through Su Zimo's mind once more. It was as though the blood-colored human face was smiling at him. "It's just an illusion." Su Zimo shook his head forcefully. "What's wrong?" Sensing the change in Su Zimo's expression, Monk Yuan Bei asked concernedly with a pale face. Su Zimo said slowly, "I've seen this blood-colored human face before." The expressions of the red-headed ghost and Monk Yuan Bei changed. Taking a deep breath of air, Su Zimo gave a rough account of the matter in the Thousand-Year Blood Sea in Thousand Demon Valley. Monk Yuan Bei and the red-headed ghost exchanged glances and revealed shocked expressions as well. The red-headed ghost narrowed his eyes and said sternly, "I heard that a huge battle broke out in Thousand Demon Valley about 30,000 years ago. That battle was extremely tragic. It was said that not only the demons of Thousand Demon Valley, even the demons of the other 8 regions were implicated. Even emperors of the demon race died in it. That battle was known as the Thousand Demon Tribulation." Monk Yuan Bei nodded. "I've heard about it as well." Su Zimo opened his mouth slightly with a shocked expression. "In that case, the bones that he saw when the heaven-slaying sword art was born should be the bones left behind from the Thousand Demon Tribulation 30,000 years ago. A blood-colored human face appeared among the corpses after the catastrophe of Great Qin 10,000 years ago. A blood-colored human face appeared as well near the endless carcasses after the Thousand Demon Tribulation 30,000 years ago. Could it have been a mere coincidence?" In the backyard of the hall, the three of them fell silent. There was only a gentle breeze with a hint of sinister coldness. "If I'm not wrong, the owner of this blood face should have been cultivating the Blood Refinement Fiend Sutra." Monk Yuan Bei said, "Only a fiend technique of that level will devour bloodlines for its cultivation." Su Zimo nodded. He had cultivated the Blood Refinement Fiend Sutra before and knew how terrifying that fiend technique was. Even with his Tao heart's determination, he would feel a bloodthirsty desire every time he released it. The feeling of absorbing energy was way too comfortable and one could sink into it step by step without realizing it. That was the reason why Su Zimo did not release the Blood Refinement Fiend Sutra after realizing that. Even in the Tao inheritance ground where his life was hanging by a thread, he did not release it. Su Zimo had a feeling that he would be doomed the moment he became dependent on the Blood Refinement Fiend Sutra. He had to kill that sense of dependence. Monk Yuan Bei shook his head gently and sighed. To think that even after Tao Lord Blood Fiend died tens of thousands of years ago, the fiend technique he created is still passed down and has such a huge impact on the future. In Su Zimo's mind, he could not help but recall the stone coffin that he saw floating in a pool of blood when he, Demonist Ji and the fiend heirs headed underground. He recalled the skeleton that crawled out from the stone coffin. Tao Lord Blood Fiend might not be dead yet. Su Zimo's expression was grim as he said in a deep voice, "Or rather, he has already come back to life and returned." Su Zimo recounted what he had seen deep underground and his speculation. I've heard you mention this before. However, the battle between Monk Daming and Tao Lord Bloodfiend happened more than 40,000 years ago. How can Tao Lord Bloodfiend live for so long? Was he relying on that single Mingwang prayer bead? Monk Yuan Bei frowned. There are still many unexplainable points to your speculation. The red-headed ghost added. For example, why were there so many chains wrapped around that stone coffin? If they could set up so many preparations, why did they not kill him directly? Su Zimo nodded. He could not explain those questions either. Chapter 1070, Entering the Yang Spirit. Chapter 1070, Entering the Yang Spirit. Su Zimo still had many questions in his mind after that exchange. However, at the very least, some of his doubts were resolved. The identity of the woman beneath the ruins. Furthermore, he finally knew who was the one who killed the cultivators, an even conjoined body mighty figure, who entered the bottom of the Dragon Burial Valley to investigate for the past 10,000 years. The methods of that great Chen advisor were truly terrifying. Not only could he hide from the senses of Monk Yuan Bei and the red-headed ghost, he could even kill in silence right under their noses. Of course, what delighted Su Zimo more was that he understood more about Daiyu. Daiyu did not stay at the bottom of the Dragon Burial Valley for long. However, what she did had a huge impact on the three of them. There was no need to elaborate on her impact on Su Zimo. If Daiyu had not stepped in, Monk Yuan Bei and the red-headed ghost might not have been able to escape from the great Chen advisor's schemes. Both of them would have been kept in the dark. The appearance of the great Chen advisor made the two of them realize that they were merely chess pieces that were manipulated in the catastrophe. Daiyu's attack was equivalent to releasing both of them at the same time. It was also after Daiyu killed the great Chen advisor that Ming Zhen could be saved by Monk Yuan Bei and brought to the bottom of the Dragon Burial Valley. Otherwise, Ming Zhen would have been killed in silence by the great Chen advisor before Monk Yuan Bei even noticed his presence. Lad, what are your plans next? The red-headed ghost asked. Su Zimo replied, I'll be cultivating at the bottom of the valley for a period of time. The red-headed ghost nodded and said, yes, that's good as well. Don't worry, I've severely injured that D clan's half-martial ancestor. It's already good enough that he survived. There's no way he can take revenge on you. Monk Yuan Bei said, these sects and factions might not dare to lay their hands on you openly, but you have to be careful. Got it? Su Zimo nodded. From this day forth, he would cultivate at the bottom of the Dragon Burial Valley wholeheartedly. He went through the insights gained from the consecutive battles with many titular disciples, cultivated the Great Void Spirit Refinement section, chanted sutras and paid respects to Buddha as he accumulated and consolidated his experience. At the same time in the Dragon Bone Valley. An entire month passed and Su Zimo woke up slowly in the cave of the Primordial Divine Spring. Ever since he started cultivating, he had never had such a peaceful, comfortable and relaxed sleep. He was truly too tired. Su Zimo opened his eyes slowly and looked at the surging golden spring water beside him. He gradually snapped out of his stupor as he sensed the boundless vitality that surrounded his body. He finally realized where he was. Solitary Cloud was not by his side. He must have recovered from his injuries and left first. Splash. Su Zimo stood up and looked down at his body. His body was completely intact. There were no injuries at all. The primordial divine spring was indeed powerful. Even his body that was devoid of life could be restored to its original state. Su Zimo could clearly sense that every single move he made could release an incomparably terrifying power. With a single thought, he channeled his bloodline. Splash. The sound of a tsunami came from his body. This true body of the dragon race was even stronger than before. Su Zimo was slightly stunned as though he had realized something. In his consciousness, the injuries on the scarlet-haired Yin spirit had already healed. Not only that, he was shocked to discover that the Yin impurities on his essence spirit had vanished completely and were refined silently. There was an additional trace of pure Yang Qi on the essence spirit. The Yang spirit. Su Zimo's eyes were filled with immense joy. In that 1 month, he merely slept in the primordial divine spring and his cultivation had already crossed a major realm to advance to the Yang spirit realm. According to the mystic classic of the 12 demon kings of the great wilderness, the Yang spirit realm corresponded to the void reversion realm. In other words, his true body of the dragon race had already entered the void reversion realm. To leap a major cultivation realm after a single sleep sounded like a fantasy. However, in reality, it was merely a matter of everything arriving at its course. Firstly, the scarlet-haired Yin spirit was already at its peak. If not for the fact that he was suppressed in the Tao inheritance ground, he would have broken through before the black-haired essence spirit. Secondly, Su Zimo slept in the primordial divine spring. Thanks to the nourishment of the primordial divine spring, the scarlet-haired Yin spirit's injuries were healed and its boundless life force pushed forward. Naturally, it refined all the impurities in the essence spirit and entered the void reversion realm. Other cultivators would require a lot of preparation if they wanted to cross a major cultivation realm. Furthermore, there was a high chance of failure. However, given Su Zimo's Tao heart, it was impossible for him to fail his breakthrough in the primordial divine spring even if he was unconscious. The moment he woke up, not only did his true body of the dragon race recover, he had even entered the void reversion realm. Su Zimo was elated. He released his spirit consciousness slowly and pushed it to its limits. 500 kilometers. The moment he entered the void reversion realm, the range of his spirit consciousness had already exceeded 500 kilometers. A normal early-stage void reversion Tao being's spirit consciousness could only extend up to 50 kilometers. At the perfected void reversion realm, one could be considered as a paragon if they could reach 40 kilometers. However, the scarlet-haired Yin spirit consciousness had already surpassed 500 kilometers. Have you heard? 2 outsiders joined the Illumination Dragon lineage a month ago. I heard that one of them is a WRM and the other one isn't considered a dragon either. I heard that his bloodline isn't pure and he seems to be a son accepted by an old elder of the Illumination Dragon lineage. Ever since that incident 10,000 years ago, the Illumination Dragon lineage has been getting worse. They're now even taking in WRMs and dragons with impure bloodlines. After spreading his spirit consciousness, Su Zimo could naturally hear the gossip happening outside the cave. What's the use of taking them in? They will be tortured for as long as they stay in the dragon race. They won't be able to live for long if they don't recognize their circumstances. That's right. I heard that the WRM was thrown to the side of the mixed dragon lineage and was beaten up all day. He's covered in injuries and won't be able to last much longer. At that point, Su Zimo frowned and his expression turned cold. The reason why he brought Solitary Cloud here was to obtain an opportunity for the latter, not to let him suffer. By the way, that long MO with the impure bloodline seems to be still soaking in the primordial divine spring. It's been a month, right? Fuck, I've been in the Dragon Bone Valley for so long but I've never been to the primordial divine spring. How can a bastard with an impure bloodline like him enter? When he comes out, I'll definitely teach him a lesson. Hehe, we won't even get our turn. The brothers from the Illumination Dragon lineage can't wait any longer and have been waiting for this long MO to return. Do you think that Long Mo is hiding in the primordial divine spring the entire time and doesn't dare to come out because he knows he's going to be walloped real hard? It's highly possible. Just as the few dragons were discussing, a voice sounded from behind them. Everyone, may I check with you the directions to the mixed dragon lineage region? The few dragons turned back and saw a scarlet-haired man standing on them. He had refined features and asked expressionlessly. Over there. A dragon pointed instinctively. Thank you. The scarlet-haired man expressed his thanks and turned to leave. Before long, he disappeared from everyone's sight. That person didn't look familiar at all, right? Scarlet hair, he should be from the Illumination Dragon lineage. But I haven't seen him before? Could it be Long Mo? It must be him. Let's go take a look. Many dragons followed hurriedly. Chapter 1071. Who did you say have a death wish? Chapter 1071. Who did you say have a death wish? Within the main hall of the Illumination Dragon lineage. 3 elders of the Illumination Dragon lineage were sitting inside when an old man walked in. It was Elder 4. There's news from the primordial divine spring that Long Mo has just woken up and his injuries have healed. Furthermore, he's already at the void reversion realm. Elder 4 said in a deep voice, I heard that this lad has already headed to the mixed dragon lineage region. Where's Long Chio and the others? Elder 3 asked. Elder 4 said, they've already brought people over in an aggressive manner. They must have gone to kill Long Mo. The 4 elders exchanged glances. We'll find out soon enough whether he's a dragon or a worm. the Grand Elder said with a smile. The mixed dragon lineage had an extremely low status in the dragon race. Although they retained a spot in the Dragon Bone Valley, they occupied a small area. Furthermore, the dragons of the mixed dragon lineage had many restrictions in the Dragon Bone Valley. They could not go anywhere and were mostly slaves among the 5 dragon lineages. The lower the level, the more chaotic it was. Among the 5 lineages of the dragon race, fights between fellow clansmen could happen at any moment. This was even more common among the mixed dragon lineage. Although the area was small, there were many dragons with thin bloodlines living in it. Gradually, 4 major factions were formed: Rain, Cloud, Coiling and Flood Dragon. Battles often broke out between the 4 factions. However, there were much fewer fights between the 4 factions these days. It was because an outsider had appeared in their territory. Most importantly, this outsider had no right to step foot on this land. Even the Flood Dragon lineage could not accept this person. He was a WRM and was far from an actual Flood Dragon. Although there was only a single word difference between the two, it was like the difference between heaven and earth. However, many of the dragons here heard that not only did this outsider step foot into this place, he even enjoyed the primordial divine spring that none of them were qualified to enjoy. This made many dragons even more displeased. Over the past few days, every single void reversion of the dragon race, be it from the Rain, Cloud, Coiling or Flood Dragon lineages, would have someone teach that outsider a lesson and they would not get tired of it. Without strength, he was not qualified to live with them. A snake does not get to live together with dragons. That was the pride of the dragon race. In their eyes, the WRM was a snake. Dragon lairs were built around a towering mountain peak. Every dragon lair was extremely spacious and tall, allowing the dragons to reside and cultivate. At that moment, there were many dragons gathered in front of a dragon lair. There were almost 100 people from the Cloud, Coiling, Rain and Flood Dragon lineages. Whose turn is it to teach that person a lesson today? It's our Flood Dragon lineage's turn. I'll do it. A young man in white robes stood out. He had a strong physique and rubbed his palms together. With a smile on his face, he walked towards the dragon lair with a relaxed expression. Hey, be gentle. Don't kill him directly. There are still many people from our Cloud Dragon lineage waiting to train using him. Some dragons shouted as they laughed. Unknowingly, a scarlet-haired man had appeared in the crowd. He had refined features and a fair complexion. Hey. The scarlet-haired man patted the dragon on the shoulder and asked, if this WRM is cultivating in the dragon lair, you guys won't be able to get him to come out, right? Although dragons could fight and kill at will, there were restrictions as well. If any dragon were to stay in their lair and cultivate, the other dragons could not disturb them. The other dragons could only challenge a dragon after he left his lair. Foo-foo. The dragon laughed. Brother, you're talking about the rules of our dragon race. However, that thing inside is a WRM. What rights does he have to stay here? If he hides inside and doesn't come out, we'll naturally go in and drag him out. When he heard that, the scarlet-haired man was expressionless but his gaze turned colder. When the dragon saw that this person looked unfamiliar, he wanted to ask. However, his aura weakened when he met with the person's gaze and he swallowed the words that were about to come out of his mouth. It was a suppression that came from his bloodline. Someone from the Illumination Dragon lineage? When the dragon noticed the scarlet-haired man's hair, he frowned slightly and thought to himself, something's not right. He looks like he's from the Illumination Dragon lineage, but why does it feel like his bloodline is impure? Although he was puzzled, the dragon did not dare to ask. Standing beside the scarlet-haired man, he felt his heart palpitate as though a calamity was about to descend upon him at any moment. The scarlet-haired man was Su Zimo. When he heard about Solitary Cloud's situation, he was puzzled. It was normal if Solitary Cloud was not strong enough to defeat the dragons here since he had yet to transform into a proper dragon after all. However, as long as he cultivated in his lair continuously, he would naturally have a high chance of transforming into a dragon in this environment where the dragon chi was rich. How could Solitary Cloud suffer so badly? Upon hearing the dragon's reply, Su Zimo finally understood that the dragons here did not give Solitary Cloud any chance to cultivate. Solitary Cloud was nothing but a plaything in their eyes. Solitary Cloud, get the hell out. The white-robed young man declared loudly, don't think that you'll be safe just because you're hiding in the lair. You're a WRM and don't deserve to live here. Go in and drag him out. Many dragons in the crowd cheered. Just as the white-robed young man was about to barge in, a figure gradually appeared from the darkness of the lair. It became clearer and staggered. When the figure stood at the entrance of the lair, Su Zimo narrowed his eyes and his heart ached. It was Solitary Cloud. However, his appearance was almost indistinguishable. His cheeks were swollen and his facial features were contorted with wounds all over his body. Some of them had just formed scabs and his movements tugged at the wounds, causing fresh blood to flow out once more. Solitary Cloud looked wretched and miserable, covered in wounds. However, his eyes were filled with a hint of fearlessness, determination and pride. "Is it your turn today?" The corner of Solitary Cloud's mouth twitched as though he wanted to laugh. The wounds on his face ruptured and fresh blood oozed out, looking somewhat menacing. "Come on." His voice was hoarse and unpleasant. He let out a low growl from the depths of his throat, as though he was letting out an unyielding roar to all the dragons. The white-robed young man said indifferently, "I'll pass on another message from the young master. As long as you agree to be the mount of our young master, our flood dragon lineage will naturally protect you." "Absolutely impossible." Solitary Cloud said word by word without hesitation. "Foo-foo." The white-robed young man sneered. "Solitary Cloud, you're just a WRM. Our young master is giving you face by accepting you as a mount. Don't seek a rebuff. Your young master is not worthy." Solitary Cloud grinned. "You must have a death wish." The white-robed young man's expression darkened. In a flash, he appeared in front of Solitary Cloud and opened his gigantic palm to slap the latter's face. Solitary Cloud was in such a state that he could not even stand properly. He could not defend against that attack at all. All of a sudden, a breeze blew. A person appeared in front of Solitary Cloud. Piak. The white-robed young man's palm was held in that person's palm motionlessly. "Who did you say have a death wish?" The person looked at the white-robed young man calmly and asked. Chapter 1072 Next. Chapter 1072, Next. A series of exclamations sounded from the dragons. Nobody noticed how the scarlet-haired man appeared. The dragons were looking at the white-robed young man's palm, and just as it was about to land on Solitary Cloud's face, a figure had already appeared between the two of them. Furthermore, he grabbed the white-robed young man's wrist tightly. "It's that dragon from earlier on." Among the dragons, someone recognized that this was the scarlet-haired man he had conversed with earlier on. "The Illumination dragon lineage." "I think so, but his bloodline isn't pure. It looks like he just broke through." A commotion broke out among the dragons. The white-robed young man's expression changed. Even he could not see clearly how the person appeared. Instinctively he wanted to retract his arm. However, he realized that the person's palm was like a steel hoop that locked his wrist tightly and he could not move at all. "Who are you?" the white-robed young man asked sternly. All of a sudden, his expression changed as he cried out in pain. Suddenly, he felt that the intruder's palm was gradually exerting more strength. A sharp pain came from his wrist and his bones were about to be crushed. "Answer my question. Who did you say have a death wish?" Su Zimo asked coldly. "Kill?" The white-robed young man endured the pain and let out a dragon roar from the depths of his throat. Swinging his other arm, he smashed towards Su Zimo's head. Snap. Su Zimo channeled strength into his palm. The white-robed young man's wrist was snapped. Thereafter, he raised his palm gently and it landed on the face of the white-robed young man, sending the latter flying dozens of feet away and tumbling in front of the group of dragons. The dragons were in an uproar. The white-robed young man's body was covered in dust and his wrist was snapped. Half of his face had been ripped apart as well. He coughed out large mouthfuls of blood and fainted. With a single slap, the intruder severely injured a void reversion flood dragon. "Who are you?" "I've seen all the void reversion dragons of the Illumination dragon lineage but not you." Many dragons stood out and questioned Su Zimo loudly with sharp gazes and murderous intent. If they were in the cultivation world and saw the white-robed young man suffering such a serious injury, the spectating cultivators would definitely be wary. However, this was a common sight among the dragons. A scene as such could not suppress the group of dragons at all. "Master, you're here." Solitary Cloud looked at the back view in front of him and his heart lightened. Finally he smiled and relaxed completely. He had only stayed in the primordial divine spring for less than 7 days. For the next 20 days, He endured the torture of the various dragons every day and did not have time to rest and cultivate at all. He was on the brink of a mental breakdown. If not for the fact that he missed Suzimo, he would have died long ago. At that moment, he relaxed completely when he saw Suzimo appear. Solitary Cloud knew that as long as Suzimo was here, even the 5 dragon lineages won't be able to hurt him, let alone the 4 dragon factions of the mixed dragon lineage. Suzimo's expression was indifferent in the face of the dragon's questions and he ignored them completely. Turning around, he helped Solitary Cloud to the dragon's lair and sat down. Eat these elixirs. They'll help your injuries. Suzimo took out many bottles from his storage bag and placed them in Solitary Cloud's embrace. Suppressing the rage in his heart, he said softly, "Stay here and watch. I'll help you vent your anger." "All right." Solitary Cloud did not say much and nodded vigorously. "I know. You're the other outsider. You're Long Imo of the Illumination Dragon lineage." Right then, a young man of the Coiling Dragon lineage stood out from the group of dragons and pointed at Suzimo. "Your bloodline is impure and you're not worthy of being in the same group as us." "So, that's Long Imo. I heard that he joined under the recommendation from an old clan leader of the Illumination Dragon lineage. He's not qualified at all." "That's right. How can an impure Illumination Dragon enjoy the primordial divine spring?" "Long Imo, I want to challenge you." The young man of the Coiling Dragon lineage shouted with a murderous gaze. Turning around, Suzimo surveyed his surroundings and nodded. All right. Come at me together, I'll take you all." He single-handedly challenged more than 100 dragons. Brazen. Insolent. The dragons sneered and scolded. The young man of the Coiling Dragon race sneered, "Fufu, only one-on-one fights are allowed among dragons. You're trying to get us punished for violating the clan rules? Don't bother embarrassing yourself with such scheming methods." In the cultivation world, there were very few people of the same cultivation realm who dared to fight Suzimo alone. He was already used to fighting against many alone. To think that there would be such a rule in the dragon race. Of course, that was also the pride of the dragon race. "All right then." Suzimo nodded. "Next." The moment Suzimo said the word, "next," his figure flashed and he arrived before the young man of the Coiling Dragon lineage. Halfway through the word, Suzimo attacked. A punch landed heavily on the chest of the Coiling Dragon whose eyes were filled with shock. Suzimo finished saying the word. By then, the young man from the Coiling Dragon lineage had already fallen far away. His chest was deeply caved in as he coughed out large mouthfuls of blood. "I'll do it." A young man from the Rain Dragon lineage stood out. Without another word, Suzimo strode forward and raised his palm. Opening his fingers, he crushed down towards the young man of the Rain Dragon lineage as though he could blot out the skies. An extremely tragic aura surged over. The young man from the Rain Dragon lineage felt suffocated by that aura. It's too terrifying. It's impossible to defend against. That was the only thought in the young man's mind. Instinctively, he propped up his arms. Bang. Suzimo's palm landed on the arms of the Rain Dragon. Snap. Without any pause, the sound of bones cracking could be heard. The arms of the young man from the Rain Dragon lineage were snapped into two and his broken bones were exposed, stained with fresh blood. It was a shocking sight. The momentum of Suzimo's palm was not completely diminished and it landed on the head of the man, brushing against it gently. The young man from the Rain Dragon lineage fainted on the spot. Under the gazes of the dragons, Suzimo caused a Rain Dragon to faint just by pushing down and brushing his palm. Suzimo said indifferently, "Next." Kill? A young man from the Cloud Dragon lineage appeared and arrived before Suzimo. He reached out with both hands and his sharp nails dug towards Suzimo's face. Suzimo's expression was unchanged as he ignored the young man's incoming fingernails and merely extended his palm to suppress the latter. A ruthless glint flashed through the eyes of the young man from the Cloud Dragon lineage. His fingernails were incomparably sharp, comparable to divine weapons and could even penetrate divine stones. The fact that Long Imo was using his body to defend against his fingernails was akin to striking a stone with an egg. Crack, crack, crack. Before he could finish his thought, his fingernails had already been snapped by Suzimo's palm. Ah! The 10 fingers were connected to the heart. The young man from the Cloud Dragon lineage let out a tragic cry. In a flash, he turned into a gigantic cloud on the spot and vanished into it. That was the secret skill of the Cloud Dragon lineage. After releasing the cloud, their true bodies hid within and fused with the cloud. It was difficult for the other party to detect their true bodies. Su Zimo did not retract his palm at all and plunged it into the cloud. Piak. A figure fell out of the clouds. It was the young man from the Cloud Dragon lineage. The flesh on his chest was blurry and his organs were shaken. He had fainted completely. Next. Su Zimo's voice sounded coldly. Chapter 1073, Have your young master meet me. Chapter 1073, Have your young master meet me. Isn't that way too easy? The dragons gradually realized that Long Mo's strength might be more terrifying than they had imagined. The secret skill of the Cloud Dragon lineage, Cloud Confusion, was merely a decoration in Long Mo's eyes. Su Zimo cultivated the mystic classic of the 12 demon kings of the Great Wilderness. It was no exaggeration to say that even the legacy cultivation techniques of the primordial 9 races could not compare to it. Although there were no visual techniques in the mystic classic of the 12 demon kings of the Great Wilderness, his eyesight was so strong that he could see through most illusions. Furthermore, apart from the fact that Su Zimo had cultivated the illumination dragon eye in this true body of the dragon race, he possessed the illumination stone in his right eye. Pitter-patter. Pitter-patter. Without any warning, a dark cloud appeared above Su Zimo's head and it rained heavily. Like needles and swords, the raindrops fell towards Su Zimo densely. A young man from the Rain Dragon lineage attacked. However, he did not fight Su Zimo in close combat. Instead, he stood not far away and released the secret skill of the Rain Dragon lineage. Humph! Raising his head, Su Zimo's eyes were clear as he faced the falling raindrops fearlessly. Suddenly he shouted, "Disperse!" Boom! His voice was like thunder. The dark clouds hovering above Su Zimo's head dissipated with a loud bang and the pouring rain seemed to have sensed something as well as it dodged in fear. Not a single raindrop landed on Su Zimo despite the heavy downpour. The dragons were shocked. Long Imo did not move at all and merely hollered. Yet, the secret skill of the Rain Dragon lineage vanished into thin air. What sort of powers were these? Was it a bloodline suppression? That was impossible. Even the 5 dragon lineages did not possess such a terrifying bloodline. Furthermore, Long Mo's bloodline was impure. How could there be such a phenomenon? The young man from the Rain Dragon lineage was stunned on the spot and his mind went blank. Su Zimo's expression was calm as usual. With one hand behind his back, he had already arrived in front of the other person as he extended his palm and pressed down. Bang! The body of the young man from the Rain Dragon lineage shuddered and his clothes were torn apart, revealing a gigantic palm print. He was sent flying and his tendons and bones were broken as he laid on the ground, unable to stand up. In reality, although Su Zimo was furious, he was still rational. His attacks were not fatal. Apart from the dragon blood battlefield, killing in fights in other regions of the dragon race were not allowed. However, Su Zimo's attacks were extremely heavy. Tendons and bones were ruptured at every turn. Even with the powerful bloodline of the dragon race, such injuries would take at least half a month to recover. For a moment, the dragons were stunned. However, Su Zimo did not stop. As though he was strolling idly, he walked towards the group of dragons and extended his palm once more, suppressing a young man of the coiling dragon race. This time round, Su Zimo was the one who took the initiative to attack. You! The young man from the coiling dragon race was enraged. Although he was stunned by Su Zimo's methods, he could not withstand such provocation. Suddenly, the young man from the coiling dragon lineage opened his mouth and spat out a black mist. The mist carried a strong stench and produced a hissing sound the moment it was exposed. The spirit chi in the void was corroded by the mist. The bloodline of the coiling dragon lineage contained poison and they were good at using it. However, he did not realize what sort of existence he was facing. Given the bloodline of the true body of the dragon race, the poison was not a threat to Su Zimo at all. Su Zimo traversed through the pitch-black mist. His palm did not pause at all as he suppressed the young man of the coiling dragon lineage and sent the latter flying. Poof! The young man of the coiling dragon race spat out a mouthful of black blood and fainted on the spot. Su Zimo charged into the group of dragons and wherever he passed, flesh and blood splattered everywhere. All the dragons were sent flying and none of them could stop him. more than 100 dragons were crippled by Su Zimo in the blink of an eye. If it was in the cultivation world outside, the remaining cultivators would have long dispersed after encountering such a situation. However, among the dragon race, even the 4 factions did not retreat despite their thin bloodlines. The outcome of not retreating was being suppressed by blood. With one hand behind his back, Su Zimo merely used a single move. He suppressed everyone with his palm. However, none of the 100-odd dragons could defend against that single move. Complete suppression. None of the dragons that crowded at Solitary Cloud's lair were innocent. All of them had bullied Solitary Cloud before. In the blink of an eye, more than 100 dragons were suppressed by Su Zimo. They either fainted completely, or were left lying on the ground letting out tragic cries from time to time. He crushed everything in his path. On the battlefield, blood chi surged. Apart from Su Zimo, the only one who could stand on the spot was a young man from the Flood Dragon lineage. Arriving before the person, Su Zimo looked at him expressionlessly with a calm gaze without saying anything. The two of them were extremely close. The young man from the Flood Dragon lineage was pale and his arms trembled slightly. He was drenched in sweat. Although he had the dignity of a dragon, it was impossible for him to be completely fearless in the face of such a situation. The two of them stood face to face, but the young man from the Flood Dragon lineage did not dare to raise his head to look ahead. Against Su Zimo's terrifying aura, that person lowered his head and could not move at all. He even had the urge to kneel on the ground. The person before him had evoked the fear in the depths of his soul and blood. At that moment, the commotion here had already alarmed many dragons of the mixed dragon lineage. In fact, there were even figures from the 5 dragon lineages not far away. Thump. Right in front of everyone, the young man from the Flood Dragon lineage suddenly knelt down. His body was trembling uncontrollably as though he was enduring immense fear and pressure. This scene caused an uproar among the dragons. It was one thing for him to suppress the dragons, but it was another thing for a Flood Dragon to be forced to kneel by someone with one hand behind his back. Pooey. A dragon spat out his saliva forcefully with a disdainful expression and sneered, "How embarrassing. Even if you can't win, you can't kneel. The dignity of the dragon race is not to be sullied. In my opinion, that Flood Dragon won't be able to survive in the future and will definitely be bullied to death by the other Flood Dragons." The young man from the Flood Dragon lineage felt bitter when he heard the voices of the dragons. If one did not stand opposite the scarlet-haired man, they would never be able to feel that terrifying pressure. He could not defend against it at all. The scarlet-haired man gave him a feeling that he was even more terrifying than the dragons of the 5 lineages. "Do you know why I didn't suppress you?" Su Zimo asked indifferently. "And no." The young man from the Flood Dragon lineage's heart skipped a beat and his voice paused for a moment. Su Zimo said, "Go back and have your young master of the Flood Dragon lineage come see me." Although his tone was calm, it was filled with unquestionable dominance. Yes. For some reason, the young man from the Flood Dragon lineage could only agree subconsciously. That person stood up as though he had been pardoned and did not even dare to turn around. He merely lowered his head and retreated slowly. After a few feet, he turned and left hurriedly. Chapter 1074, Bloodline Suppression. Chapter 1074, Bloodline Suppression. Not far away, a few illumination dragons stood with fiery red hair and wild expressions, watching everything calmly. Interesting. The leader of the group, a young man from the illumination dragon lineage, smirked and murmured. An illumination dragon behind him frowned slightly and said in a deep voice, "Brother Chio, this long emo seems to be a little tricky to deal with." A look of disdain flashed through the eyes of the young man called Long Chio as he remarked indifferently, "Bullying some mixed dragons is nothing." "That's right." Another illumination dragon sneered, "Given the commotion here, the young masters of the 4 mixed dragon factions will definitely appear. If Long Mo can't even get past the 4 mixed dragon young masters, he's not worth Brother Chio's attention." On the other side, dragons from the horned and hornless dragon lineages had just arrived from the primordial divine spring. This Long Mo does have some capabilities. If that's all there is, it's nothing much. Although Su Zimo had suppressed more than 100 dragons along the way, his combat strength was nothing in the eyes of the 5 lineages. All dragons of the 5 lineages had such strength. However, these dragons did not know that the combat strength Su Zimo displayed earlier on was less than 30% of his true strength. The mixed dragons in the surroundings no longer advanced. If Su Zimo could suppress more than 100 dragons single-handedly, they would only be bullied if they went forward. On the battlefield, the dragons that were strewn all over the ground did not step forward either. More and more dragons gathered here. All the dragons knew that this matter would only end when the young master of the Flood Dragon lineage arrived. Su Zimo returned to Solitary Cloud's side and whispered, "Sorry that I was late." "Master, what are you saying?" Solitary Cloud laughed. "You don't know how excited I was when I walked out of the Primordial Divine Spring and found out that I was in the Dragon Bone Valley. I won't regret it no matter how much I suffer here." "Yes." Su Zimo nodded. "In the dragon race, strength is everything. There's a limit to what I can help you with. If you want to survive here, you'll have to rely on yourself." The reason why Su Zimo attacked was not because Solitary Cloud lost in fights with dragons of the Flood Dragon lineage. It was normal for one to lose against a group of dragons because their skills were inferior. Su Zimo was furious that the dragons here did not give Solitary Cloud a chance to cultivate and become stronger. They did not even give him time to recover from his injuries. That was not fair. Since this place was unfair, he would create a fair environment for Solitary Cloud. "Don't worry, Master." Solitary Cloud's gaze was resolute. "As long as I'm given time to cultivate, I'll definitely be able to transform into a dragon." Pausing for a moment, Solitary Cloud's gaze landed on dragons of the 5 lineages not far away. With a grim expression, he whispered, "Master, the people from the 5 lineages are here. Things seem to have gotten a little out of hand." "It's fine." Su Zimo glanced sideways indifferently before retracting his gaze. As long as those dragons did not cause trouble for him, he could not be bothered. Time slowly passed. There were not only dragons from the mixed dragon lineage, many from the 5 lineages came as well. Countless gazes landed on Su Zimo with strong hostility. Anyone with a fragile heart would not be able to withstand being surrounded by dragons. Even though Solitary Cloud was sitting behind Su Zimo, he was still feeling uneasy. As a WRM, he would feel immense pressure even if he was targeted by a single dragon, let alone a group of dragons. However, Su Zimo was composed and merely closed his eyes to regulate his breathing. Right then, a commotion broke out among the dragons. The group of dragons dispersed as another group of dragons in brocade robes strode in. The 4 people in the lead had sharp gazes and exuded a terrifying aura. "The 4 young masters are here. This is going to be interesting." The young master of the Flood Dragon lineage is considered to be at the perfected Void Reversion realm with half a foot into the Dharma characteristic realm. Long Mo's bloodline is impure and I don't think he can last more than 10 moves. The dragons were invigorated and discussed fervently. Su Zimo opened his eyes and stood up slowly. "Which of you is the young master of the Flood Dragon lineage?" He asked indifferently with a cold expression as his gaze lingered on the 4 dragon young masters. A blue-robed young man in the middle stood out and grinned slightly, revealing a row of pearly white teeth. He gave off a ferocious aura and sneered, "I am." The other 3 young masters crossed their arms and watched coldly from the sidelines. "Oh." Su Zimo raised his brow and asked, "I heard that you want to make Solitary Cloud your mount." "That's right, it's the honor of that WRM to be able to be my mount." The young master of the Flood Dragon lineage sneered, "Why? Do you have a problem with that?" "Yes." Su Zimo nodded and said slowly, "He's my mount. If you want to subdue him, you'll have to ask for my opinion first." "Sure." The young master of the Flood Dragon lineage gripped his fists and twisted his neck. Sounds of bones cracking could be heard coming from his body as his eyes shone with a ferocious glint. "If you have any objections, I'll beat you until you have none." Boom. The bloodline of the young master of the Flood Dragon lineage surged and his feet stomped heavily on the ground. He burst forth with immense strength and charged towards Su Zimo. There was no need for nonsense between dragons, all of them were decisive in killing. Boom. Su Zimo's expression was calm. He merely took a single step forward and an even louder bang sounded. Plow Heaven Stride. The ground shook. The surrounding dragons were caught off guard and swayed. With the Plow Heaven Stride, a torrential might burst forth from Su Zimo's body and suppressed the incoming young master of the Flood Dragon lineage. The Flood Dragon young master's expression changed. The moment he arrived in front of Su Zimo, he felt a terrifying might surge towards him and his heart shuddered. That man seems to have some tricks up his sleeves. The thought flashed through the Flood Dragon young master's mind and his vision darkened. Swoosh! An evil gust of wind blew past. Su Zimo extended his palm and spread his fingers, covering the skies and creating a large shadow that shrouded his head as it suppressed down. The aura was tragic. The Flood Dragon young master shuddered. He finally realized how the 100-odd dragons from before were defeated. The pressure was way too great. This was an absolute suppression of bloodline and strength. Ah! The Flood Dragon young master roared into the skies and let out a loud dragon roar. Circulating his bloodline to its limits, he punched out with both fists towards Su Zimo's palm. Boom! The fists and palm collided with a loud bang. Su Zimo was motionless with a calm expression. After a brief moment, blood drained from the face of the Flood Dragon young master. Crack, crack, crack. The sound of bones cracking could be heard from his arms. Poof, poof, poof. The clothes on his arms were torn apart and the flesh on his arms exploded into blood mists under the suppression of the terrifying power. Bang. The Flood Dragon young master smashed onto the ground heavily, creating a huge pit. The dragons were shocked. Even the dragons of the 5 lineages frowned. One move. The Flood Dragon young master, who was half a step into Dharma characteristic realm, could not even defend against a single palm strike from Long Mo. There was no need for technique. This was an absolute bloodline suppression. Chapter 1075, Domineering Sweep. Chapter 1075, Domineering Sweep. To be fair, the bloodline that Su Zimo cultivated from the mystic classic of the 12 demon kings of the great wilderness was stronger than even the purest illumination dragon bloodline. The young master of the Flood Dragon lineage before him could not even match up to the bloodline of the Illumination Dragon lineage. How could he fight against Su Zimo? Su Zimo was able to suppress the young master of the Flood Dragon lineage with ease merely by relying on his physique. The young master of the Flood Dragon lineage's arms were broken and his flesh was mangled. He struggled to stand up and glared at Su Zimo fiercely. Although he lost, he would not admit defeat. The reason why he was able to become the young master of the Flood Dragon lineage was because he had fought his way up and had encountered even more tragic situations. This injury was nothing to him. Now that he was defeated, he would naturally cultivate even harder and work hard to become a member of the 5 dragon lineages. As long as the dragons of the mixed dragon lineage were strong enough, they had a chance to pass the test of the 5 dragon lineages to become one of them. Of course, this test was extremely dangerous. In the past 10,000 years, there were less than 10 mixed dragons that could pass this test and their lives were easily at risk. Good. The young master of the Flood Dragon lineage grit his teeth. Long Mo, you do have some tricks up your sleeves. I'll remember today's humiliation in my heart. I'll definitely challenge you in the future. Today's matter is not over yet. Su Zimo pointed in front of Solitary Cloud and said indifferently, "Come over and apologize." Ha 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 ha. Even though the young master of the Flood Dragon lineage was severely injured, he reared his head in laughter as though he had heard the greatest joke in the world. Apologize? The young master of the Flood Dragon lineage asked coldly with a mocking gaze. Long Mo, while I may have lost, it's impossible if you want me to bow my head. It's not up to you in front of me. When Su Zimo saw that the young master of the Flood Dragon lineage was still extremely arrogant, he could not help but snort coldly. Stepping forward, he reached out and grabbed the latter's neck, lifting him up. The young master of the Flood Dragon lineage had a strong physique, but Su Zimo carried him as though he was carrying a chick and turned to stand in front of Solitary Cloud. Kneel down and apologize. Su Zimo's tone was calm but unquestionable. Dream on. The young master of the Flood Dragon lineage spat out with a ferocious gaze without any fear. Bang, bang. Su Zimo extended his toes and tapped gently on the young master's knees. The bones in both knees cracked instantly. Ah! The young master of the Flood Dragon lineage could not hold it in any longer and let out a tragic cry. His knees buckled and he knelt down. There was no pity in Su Zimo's eyes. Compared to Solitary Cloud's injuries, this was nothing. Thankfully, Solitary Cloud's life was not in danger. If anything happened to Solitary Cloud, Su Zimo would dare to kill even in the Dragon Bone Valley. Su Zimo's expression was cold as he pushed down the head of the young master of the Flood Dragon lineage in front of everyone. The young master of the Flood Dragon lineage was flushed red. No matter how he channeled his bloodline, he could not withstand the pressure above him. He could only watch helplessly as his face approached the ground. Humiliation. It was an unprecedented humiliation. The young master of the Flood Dragon lineage was indignant. Su Zimo did not only want the young master of the Flood Dragon lineage to apologize, he intended for the dragons of the Mixed Dragon lineage to watch as well. If they fought fairly with Solitary Cloud, he would not care. However, if they tried to bully him in numbers, they would end up in the same state as the young master of the Flood Dragon lineage. Long Imo, aren't you going a little overboard? Right then the young master of the Cloud Dragon lineage stood out and glared at Su Zimo. His eyes were filled with fighting spirit without any fear. The young master of the Flood Dragon lineage felt the power above his head lighten and could not help but feel ecstatic. Finally someone stood out. Releasing his palm, Su Zimo turned around and nodded. Since you've taken the initiative to stand out, it saves me the trouble of looking for you. Before he finished his sentence, Su Zimo's figure flashed and a series of afterimages appeared behind him. In the blink of an eye, he arrived before the young master of the Cloud Dragon lineage. Kneel down too. Su Zimo hollered and reached out with his gigantic palm, grabbing towards the young master of the Cloud Dragon lineage. The Cloud Dragon young master's expression changed. When Su Zimo charged over, he realized that the difference in strength between the two of them was too great. They could not fight head-on. Swoosh. The Cloud Dragon young master spat out a gigantic cloud of mist and disappeared. Compared to the Cloud Dragon earlier on, the secret skill released by the Cloud Dragon young master was clearly much more brilliant. Surrounded by clouds, Su Zimo's spirit consciousness, vision and hearing were severely affected. The presence of the Cloud Dragon young master was erratic and he could avoid Su Zimo's senses. He was definitely not a nobody to become a young master of a lineage. Su Zimo had a calm expression. He had many methods that could dispel that secret skill. However, at that moment he was motionless and even his eyes were closed. All of a sudden, Su Zimo opened his eyes and released two divine lights. Suddenly he shifted horizontally and leaned in that direction. Bang! There was a dull sound of defeat. A figure fell out of the clouds with blood spewing from his mouth. Half of his body was smashed and he looked miserable. It was the Cloud Dragon young master. 2 moves. Even the Cloud Dragon young master who released his secret skill could only withstand 2 moves. Among Su Zimo's many techniques, the simplest and easiest was to rely on his spirit perception. The only way for the Cloud Dragon young master to avoid it was if he could hold himself back and not attack Su Zimo. Otherwise, as long as he made a move, Su Zimo would be the first to sense it. No matter how strong the secret skill was, his true body would be detected. The clouds dispersed and Su Zimo's figure appeared. He picked up the Cloud Dragon young master and threw him beside the Flood Dragon young master. The Flood Dragon young master was just feeling ecstatic when he discovered that the Cloud Dragon young master was tossed to his side as well. Bang! Bang! Su Zimo did the same and tapped the Cloud Dragon young master on his knees, making him kneel in front of Solitary Cloud. The two young masters had ugly expressions and their eyes were spewing fire. Under the watchful eyes of so many dragons, this was a humiliation for them. The expressions of the Coiling Dragon and Rain Dragon young masters were terrible as well. They had already vaguely realized something. However, given their status, there was no way they could retreat under such circumstances. They had not expected to provoke such a terrifying existence. Su Zimo turned around and walked towards the two young masters, saying calmly, "The two of you kneel here as well." The expressions of the two young masters changed slightly. True enough. This Long Imo actually wanted the 4 young masters to kneel and apologize to Solitary Cloud. Long Imo, don't go overboard. The young master of the Coiling Dragon lineage said sternly. I should be the one saying that to you guys. Su Zimo strode forward and did not waste his breath on the young master of the Coiling Dragon lineage. He attacked right away and suppressed the latter. You. Before the young master of the Coiling Dragon lineage could react, he was severely injured by Su Zimo's punch and fell. The difference was too great. The young master of the Rain Dragon lineage was not spared either. He was severely injured after 2 breaths. In the blink of an eye, all 4 young masters were suppressed by Su Zimo. Su Zimo swept through the Mixed Dragon lineage domineeringly. Chapter 1076, 50% Strength. Chapter 1076, 50% Strength. Most of the dragons looked at Su Zimo with reverence in their eyes. In the dragon race, strength reigns supreme. In order to obtain the acknowledgement of the dragons, one had to rely on their strength. From this day forth, at least within the region of the mixed dragon lineage, most of the dragons would no longer dare to provoke him. Su Zimo carried the Cloud and Coiling Dragon young masters and arrived before Solitary Cloud. He kicked and smashed the knees of the two young masters, causing them to kneel down. Although the four young masters were defeated, they refused to bow down. In their eyes, Long Mo wouldn't be smug for long. They were sharp and had long noticed that dragons of the five lineages were here. Not far away there were even people from the Illumination Dragon lineage watching the battle. They had long heard the news that many Illumination Dragons were waiting for Long Mo to leave the Primordial Divine Spring to teach him a lesson. The four young masters believed that with their defeat, the Illumination Dragons who were watching the battle would definitely not stand by idly. At that time, it would be the end for Long Mo. The bloodline power of the Illumination Dragon lineage was much stronger than theirs and was definitely not something that Long Mo could compare with given his impure bloodline. Right then, a few Illumination Dragons who were watching from afar walked over. The four young masters were invigorated and felt as though their injuries had lessened. Piak, piak, piak. Not far away the sound of clapping could be heard. Long Chio of the Illumination Dragon lineage strode over with a relaxed expression. The corners of his lips curled up slightly as he remarked in a mocking manner, "Long Mo, you sure are impressive. You've already swept through the mixed dragon lineage after a month in the Dragon Bone Valley." Ha ha ha. His bloodline isn't pure, so I reckon he can only vent his anger on a few dragons. The few Illumination Dragons behind Long Chio roared with laughter. The dragon race had always been extremely hostile towards outsiders. Furthermore, this outsider's bloodline was impure and he even enjoyed the primordial divine spring that many dragons were not qualified to enjoy. The reason why Su Zimo was so domineering was because there were no rules or etiquette in the dragon race. If he wanted to gain a foothold, he had to show absolute strength. Is there anything? Su Zimo was expressionless. When he saw that they were from the Illumination Dragon lineage, he was unwilling to bother them on account of his relationship with the red-headed ghost. Furthermore, the Illumination Dragon lineage did not do anything overboard to Solitary Cloud. It's not bad that you want to avenge your mount. Long Chio raised his chin and said coldly, "But don't forget, this is the dragon race. Your mount is a WRM. No matter how strong you are, you can't change his fate." Fate? Su Zimo sneered. He had never believed in fate. If he believed in fate, he wouldn't have been able to get to where he was today. He did not want to bother with the few Illumination Dragons, nor did he want to get into a conflict with them. Surveying his surroundings, Su Zimo looked at the dragons and said in a deep voice, "I'm not doing this for anything else. I just want to fight for a fair opportunity for Solitary Cloud." No matter what bloodline or lineage he is from, he has already obtained the recognition of the dragon race by coming here and obtaining a lair. I don't care if you guys fight against Solitary Cloud. After a brief pause, Su Zimo continued, "However, if he's cultivating in the lair, you guys can't disturb him. That's the bottom line. Anyone who dares to cross that bottom line will end up like this." With that, Su Zimo slapped the heads of the four young masters and smashed them onto the ground. Bang. They knelt and kowtowed. When they saw that, the expressions of Long Chio and the others darkened. Su Zimo's disregard enraged them. "Long Mo, are you still in the mood to care about others?" Long Chio's gaze was cold as he said slowly, "You're just a bastard with an impure bloodline. If you want to establish yourself in the Illumination Dragon lineage, you'll have to get through me first." Su Zimo furrowed his brows slightly. He gave in repeatedly, but the other party took advantage of it time and again. He did not want to have any conflict with anyone from the Illumination Dragon lineage because of the red-headed ghost and his bloodline. However, if Long Chio continued to be oblivious, it wouldn't be Su Zimo's fault. "Bastard." Su Zimo nodded. "Don't blame me if you dare to speak to me like that." Boom. Su Zimo stomped his feet and the ground quaked. Long Chio channeled his bloodline and his aura surged. He stood on the ground firm and motionless as he sneered, "Puny tricks." Before he could finish his sentence, Su Zimo had already attacked. Swoosh. A gigantic palm descended and caused the air to explode. Shadows covered the skies and a suffocating aura surged forth. Long Chiu was watching from the side and was already prepared for Su Zimo's move. He raised his arms and his blood surged. The flesh on his arms expanded and his clothes tore. His two tough arms were muscular and exuded a scorching aura like two gigantic red iron rods. Herg. Exhaling, Long Chiu raised his arms and blocked Su Zimo's palm. Bang. Both sides collided head-on. Heatwaves surged and spread rapidly in all directions. Su Zimo was motionless with his scarlet hair fluttering. However, Long Chiu's expression changed slightly and he staggered 3 steps back. He was actually the one disadvantaged in this first round of exchange between them. This time round, the dragons truly realized how terrifying Long Mo was. It was nothing much to be able to suppress the mixed dragon lineage. However, if he could fight against the dragons of the 5 lineages, it proved that he was indeed backed by immense strength. Long Chiu took 3 steps back and burst into laughter. Long Mo, that's all you've got? Long Chiu smiled. Although I took 3 steps back, do you know that I only used 80% of my strength to defend against your palm strike? If I release my full strength, you'll definitely be defeated. Oh. Su Zimo raised his brow. He did not care how much strength Long Chiu used. He only knew that he had only used 30% of his strength in that palm strike. Since that's the case, take another palm strike from me. Su Zimo strode forward and reached out with his palm once more to suppress the other party. Swoosh. An evil wind blew. Roar. Long Chiu reared his head and howled into the skies, letting out a resounding dragon roar that reverberated through the world. Immediately after, Long Chiu's body expanded and tore his clothes. His bloodline was pushed to its limits and scarlet dragon scales appeared on his body. Typically speaking, apart from the battles in the dragon blood battlefield, dragons were not allowed to revert to their full dragon forms in the other regions. But now, Long Chiu was not breaking the rules of the dragon race. His current state was similar to Su Zimo's dragonification in the past. It was only a half-dragon form. Among the dragon race, there were 2 phases of dragonification. The first was the half-dragon and the second was the full dragon form. Long Chiu sounded disdainful in his tone. However, he did not dare to be careless against Su Zimo. With just a single exchange, he had already transformed into his half-dragon form and was prepared to release all his strength to defend against Su Zimo's palm strike. A roar burst forth from the depths of Long Chiu's throat. He strode forward and raised his arms to defend against the incoming palm strike. Bang. There was a deafening sound. Both of them maintained that posture motionlessly, as though they were frozen. After a brief pause, a series of crackling sounds could be heard from within Long Chiu's body. It was as though all the bones in his body had collapsed. Long Chiu spat out a mouthful of blood. Under the immense pressure, blood seeped out from the gaps of his dragon scales. Su Zimo merely used 50% of his strength, but Long Chiu could not defend against it. Chapter 1077 Noisy. Chapter 1077, Noisy. Even if Su Zimo defeated more than 100 mixed dragons and suppressed the 4 young masters of the mixed dragon lineage, the dragons would only be slightly surprised but not shocked. The bloodline of the mixed dragon lineage was thin and there was a huge difference in their combat strength compared to the 5 dragon lineages. But now, Long Chiu of the Illumination dragon lineage was suppressed so easily by Long Mo before them. That was what truly moved the dragons. The bloodline of the dragon race was terrifying and their physiques were strong. Most of them fought in melee combat. As for Su Zimo, he cultivated the mystic classic of the 12 demon kings of the great wilderness and his melee combat strength was the most terrifying. Coupled with his dragon true body, he was invincible. Many cultivators in the cultivation world knew this. However, there were only a few people in the Dragon Bone Valley who knew of Su Zimo's background. These dragons had to be insane if they thought they could gain an advantage in melee combat. Up till now, Su Zimo had not even used his bloodline or any melee combat techniques. He merely relied on his physique to suppress and crush everything. Courting. Death. Long Chiu struggled to stand up from the ground and glared at Su Zimo fiercely with a livid expression. He lost to an outsider right in front of everyone and that caused him to feel utterly humiliated. Brother Chiu, are you all right? The few illumination dragons behind him could not help but ask with worried expressions. Scram. Long Chiu pushed everyone away and said coldly, I haven't lost yet. As long as Long Qiu did not admit defeat, he could continue fighting. However, the dragons could tell that Long Qiu's organs were already shaken. Even if he continued fighting, he would only be asking for trouble. Su Zimo's expression was indifferent. To be fair, Long Qiu's combat strength was definitely not weak. In the cultivation world, he could even be compared to the various titular disciples. However, it was nothing in Su Zimo's eyes. With the help of the primordial divine spring, his body recovered and he had entered the void reversion realm and obtained the pure yang spirit, causing his combat strength to increase tremendously. It was no exaggeration to say that he was invincible in melee combat. Long Qiu panted heavily and a huge stream of air spewed from his nose and mouth. It carried a scorching aura and the rage in his heart burned even more furiously. Even the few illumination dragons not far away could sense it. "Brother Qiu." One of the illumination dragons felt his heart sink as he vaguely realized something. He could not help but exclaim softly, wanting to remind Long Qiu to calm down. However, Long Qiu did not seem to have heard anything. The illumination dragon lineage possessed the fire attribute and most of them were extremely hot-tempered and impatient. It was the same for Long Qiu. Initially, he already felt immensely humiliated after his defeat. However, Su Zimo's nonchalant attitude triggered him even more. Disdain. Long Qiu experienced underestimation like never before. He was a dragon. He would never allow an outsider with an impure bloodline to ride on his head. He would rather endure the punishment of the clan rules and retrieve his dignity by trampling on this outsider. The moment that thought appeared in his mind, it grew wildly and was unstoppable. Roar. Finally, Long Qiu could no longer hold it in and howled into the skies, letting out a loud dragon roar. Dragon scales grew on his face and his head changed, forming a pair of gigantic scarlet dragon horns that were towering. Crackle. A series of crackling sounds came from his body. His body expanded and elongated continuously. In the blink of an eye, Long Qiu had already vanished and transformed into a scarlet dragon that was dozens of feet long. Dragon scales grew densely on the gigantic dragon's body. Each was the size of a palm and they looked like pieces of red-hot iron that emitted a scorching aura. Long Qiu shook his head and glared at Su Zimo, who was as tiny as an ant on the ground with his lantern-sized dragon eyes, exuding the tremendous might of the dragon race. This was the complete form of a dragon. Normally speaking, apart from the Dragon Blood battlefield, dragons were not allowed to release their complete forms in other regions of the Dragon Bone Valley. That was because when the complete dragon form was released, its strength would increase exponentially and its destructive power would be too terrifying. If it could not contain its power, there would be dragons that would die. As an equivalence to the mortal world, even if children were injured in a bare-handed fight, nothing serious would happen. However, if they wielded sharp sabers, the outcome would be unpredictable. Dragons were rare and difficult to breed. There was no way they would allow a complete dragon form to be released in private fights. That was a rule of the clan. Anyone that disobeyed it would be punished severely. But now that Long Qiu was defeated, the blow he received was too great and he had lost his rationality. Right now, there was only a single thought in his mind: to trample this puny outsider beneath his feet. The dragons were shocked and retreated one after another. Once a dragon started fighting in its complete form and its dozens of feet-long body were to move, there was a high chance that others would be drawn into the fight. It was still all right for dragons of the 5 lineages. However, for those of the mixed dragon lineage, if they were struck by a dozens of feet-long illumination dragon, they would be severely injured even if they did not die. The dragon might was as vast as an ocean and surged over. Even the dragons standing far away felt their hearts skip a beat. Many dragons from the mixed dragon lineage could not defend against this dragon might. However, on the battlefield, Su Zimo's expression was indifferent as usual as he stood there quietly. His eyes were as deep as the sea and his gaze was calm without any emotions. The man and dragon faced off. Gradually, the dragons had an illusion. Rather than Long Qiu looking down on Su Zimo, the opposite seemed to be true instead. Compared to Long Qiu's dragon body, Su Zimo looked incomparably tiny like gravel. However, for some reason, that was the illusion the dragons felt when they witnessed the scene. It was an invisible aura. Even in his complete dragon form, Long Qiu could not match Su Zimo's aura. A horned dragon shook his head slightly. Long Qiu lost. Nobody on the battlefield knew what Long Qiu was feeling right now. Under Su Zimo's gaze he felt helpless. All he wanted to do was to bow down and take on his human form once more, lowering that haughty head of his. He felt an unimaginable pressure. It was as though doing something like that in front of Long Mo was considered as an act of rebellion against his superiors. Long Qiu hated that feeling. Deep in his heart he was already starting to panic. He knew that if he did not attack now, he would have to bow down and admit defeat in front of Su Zimo merely because of the latter's gaze. Roar! Long Qiu mustered his courage and let out a deafening roar at Su Zimo. How noisy! Before the roar faded, Su Zimo hollered softly and arrived beneath Long Qiu in a flash. He reached out with his gigantic palm and grabbed Long Qiu's dragon tail. Swinging his arm, he smashed it against the ground. Boom! A deafening bang that shook the heavens and earth sounded. The hearts of the dragons skipped a beat. After the loud bang there was silence. Dust and gravel flew everywhere on the ground. A moment later, the dust dispersed and in a ravine that was more than 100 feet long lay a badly injured illumination dragon. His eyes were tightly shut and he was completely unconscious. Chapter 1078 Storm. Chapter 1078, Storm. For an extremely long time, the vicinity of the battlefield was silent. The dragons looked at the figure not far away as complicated emotions surged in their hearts. This outsider had only stayed in the Dragon Bone Valley for a month and had yet to cultivate the various cultivation techniques of the dragon race. Furthermore, this outsider's bloodline was impure. However, it was precisely such an outsider who trampled on the dignity of the dragons in the Dragon Bone Valley. It was hard to imagine how long Mo would have grown if he had cultivated in the Dragon Bone Valley for more hundreds or even 1,000 years. A horned dragon glanced sideways and whispered to his clansman beside him, "Go back and tell the eldest mistress that Long Mo has already come out of seclusion. Furthermore, he's not weak and is a little tricky. Tell her to be careful." Got it? The clansman turned and left, heading towards the habitat of the horned dragon lineage. The remaining few illumination dragons exchanged glances and nodded tacitly before leaving in a hurry. On the battlefield, Su Zimo could not be bothered with Long Qiu, who was lying on the ground. He did not even know Long Qiu's name. Since this illumination dragon had released his complete dragon form, there would naturally be enforcers of the dragon race that would look for him and punish him severely. Su Zimo turned around and returned to Solitary Cloud's side. His gaze shifted as he looked at the 4 young masters of the mixed dragon lineage kneeling before him. The 4 young masters were still dumbfounded and could not recover from the shocking scene earlier on. Sensing Su Zimo's gaze, the 4 of them jolted awake and broke out in cold sweat. The reason why the 4 of them refused to submit earlier was partly because they were embarrassed. On the other hand, and most importantly, the 4 of them believed that there was definitely someone in the Illumination Dragon lineage who could suppress Long Mo. At that time, Long Mo might end up in a worse state than them, and it was uncertain who would be the laughing stock. However, they had not expected Long Qiu of the Illumination Dragon lineage to be suppressed by Long Mo as well. The Flood Dragon young master felt vexed when he recalled how they took the initiative to challenge this person earlier on. Apologize. Su Zimo did not say much and merely uttered a single word. However, the 4 of them felt immense pressure. They could vaguely sense that they would not be able to endure the consequences if this continued on. Sorry. The Flood Dragon young master lowered his head and whispered. Although his voice was soft, the dragons present had powerful hearing and could naturally hear it clearly. The other 3 young masters did not persist either and apologized one after another. Solitary Cloud clenched his fists with an emotional expression as he leaned against the cold wall with a burning heart. He was already overjoyed that Su Zimo could bring him to the Dragon Bone Valley. He had no regrets even if he died here. What he did not expect was that he would receive the respect of the dragons here. However, this respect did not come from the hearts of the dragons. You guys can leave. Su Zimo waved his hand. The 4 young masters had their knees shattered, but they struggled to stand up still. Enduring the pain, they turned and staggered away. Everyone. Su Zimo surveyed his surroundings and said in a deep voice, "Although Solitary Cloud is my mount, I won't stand up for him for no reason. If he was defeated and injured because he fought with anyone outside the lair, it would be because he isn't skilled enough. He can't blame anyone for his lack of strength, and I won't interfere either." At that point, a commotion broke out among the dragons. Many dragons looked at Solitary Cloud with hostile gazes. This meant that as long as it was a fair fight they could still teach Solitary Cloud a lesson. Su Zimo turned around and looked at Solitary Cloud without saying anything, his eyes filled with encouragement and trust. Although Su Zimo had saved Solitary Cloud by fighting here, Solitary Cloud would still have to rely on himself if he wanted to survive in the Dragon Bone Valley. The opportunity was right before him. Su Zimo fought to create a fair environment for him. Whether or not Solitary Cloud could transform into a dragon or join the 5 lineages was up to himself. Whether or not Solitary Cloud could keep up with Su Zimo's footsteps depended on his destiny. Solitary Cloud understood the meaning in Su Zimo's eyes and nodded heavily. At that moment, his heart surged with boundless pride. Initially, his cultivation goal was to transform into a dragon and become a member of the dragon race. It was only now that he realized that if he could keep up with Su Zimo, his future would be the skies and stars. Even Tianhuang mainland could not limit him. The dragons gradually dispersed. Su Zimo sent Solitary Cloud back to the dragon lair and left as well. Solitary Cloud needed to cultivate and so did he. In the mystic classic of the 12 demon kings of the Great Wilderness, the Yin and Yang spirit sections were related to the Dragon King Desolate Ocean. It was still fine for the Yin spirit section and Su Zimo cultivated with no issues. However, the Yang spirit section was filled with a large number of ancient words and he could not understand the meaning behind them. That was the reason why he could only barely comprehend the superficial knowledge of the Dermic art, Baron, in the Yang spirit section. It was neither strong nor weak. The power of Baron did not seem to have a realm restriction. Back when he was at the nascent soul realm, he could use Baron to affect Dharma characteristic Tao Lords. This was the terrifying aspect of Baron. However, the power of Baron was not exactly strong either. Even at the center of Baron, lifespan was diminished at 100 years of breath. The effects at the boundaries were even almost negligible. Void reversions had a lifespan of 5,000 years. Dharma characteristic Tao Lords had a lifespan of 10,000 years. Indeed, Baron was naturally a great threat to cultivators in their twilight years. Back then, the Dharma characteristic Tao Lord of Hellfire Hall died silently after being enveloped by Baron. However, for void reversions Tao beings or Dharma characteristic Tao Lords at their peaks, 100 years of lifespan was not considered much. As long as they were strong enough they could definitely escape. Therefore, Su Zimo intended to make use of his opportunity to cultivate in the dragon race to see if he could comprehend the secrets of Baron and unleash its true power. This was the only Dermic art of the Yin and Yang spirit sections. The power of that Dermic art was definitely not that weak. Apart from Baron, there was another Essence Spirit secret skill in the Yang Spirit section. Su Zimo managed to comprehend a little of Baron. However, for the Essence Spirit secret skill, the ancient words were even more complicated and he could not understand them at all. According to the description in the Yang Spirit section, the might of this Essence Spirit secret skill was even more terrifying. This Essence Spirit secret skill was also the essence of the entire Yang Spirit section. The Essence Spirit secret skill was known as the Reverse Scale. Anyone who touched the reverse scale of a dragon would die. If he could comprehend the secret of the reverse scale in the dragon race, his combat strength would rise to another level. Su Zimo headed towards the habitat of the Illumination Dragon lineage with anticipation. At that moment he did not know that the entire Illumination Dragon lineage habitat had already fallen into chaos on his way back. It was like a stone that caused 1,000 ripples and caused a huge uproar. To begin with, many Illumination Dragons disliked Su Zimo. But now that Su Zimo actually swept through the Mixed Dragon lineage and Long Qiu of the Illumination Dragon lineage, many Illumination Dragons were enraged. Su Zimo had yet to realize that another storm was awaiting him within the Illumination Dragon lineage. Chapter 1079 Hidden Dragon Ranking. Chapter 1079 Hidden Dragon Ranking. Long Qiu was defeated by that newcomer. This Long Mo has some tricks up his sleeves. It said that Long Qiu went against the clan rules and transformed into his complete dragon form. However, he was still suppressed by a single move. I don't believe it. How capable can an outsider with an impure bloodline and hasn't cultivated here be? At that moment, every young Illumination Dragon in the Illumination Dragon habitat was discussing this matter. Most of the Void Reversion Realm Illumination Dragons were eager to give it a shot. They had fought against one another countless times and were long sick of it. Now that an outsider had finally arrived, Every single Illumination Dragon wanted to fight Su Zimo. I heard that even Long Yi has been alerted and is out of seclusion. Brother Yi is out of seclusion? An Illumination Dragon exclaimed. Before Brother Yi entered seclusion, he was already ranked 5th on the Hidden Dragon ranking. Now that he's out, it looks like he has a chance to advance to the next rank. This Long Mo is pretty decent to be able to attract the attention of a dragon on the Hidden Dragon ranking. Another Illumination Dragon suddenly said mysteriously, I heard that not only Brother Yi, there's also a dragon on the Hidden Dragon ranking who's prepared to cause trouble for Long Mo. Who? Many Illumination Dragons came over and asked curiously. Hee hee. The Illumination Dragon let out a strange laugh and said in a low voice, the only female dragon on the Hidden Dragon ranking. Pust. Upon hearing that, the surrounding Illumination Dragons gasped and their expressions changed. That tyrant dragon? Given the temper of that tyrant dragon, even if Long Mo doesn't die, he's bound to lose a layer of skin. Shh. Keep it down. If she hears us calling her the tyrant dragon, she'll definitely come looking for trouble with us. Say Long, she is so beautiful, but why is her temper worse than us Illumination Dragons? I really wonder which dragon will be able to tame her. I heard that the number 1 of the Hidden Dragon ranking is pursuing her. You mean to say? Many Illumination Dragons exchanged glances with odd expressions. Right then, a commotion broke out in the distance and many Illumination Dragons headed over with unfriendly expressions. Long Mo is back. Someone said. Along the way, Su Zimo pondered about his future plans in the dragon race. When he arrived at the Illumination Dragon habitat and saw the Illumination Dragons who were eager to fight, he realized that the battle earlier on was far from enough for him to secure a foothold in the Dragon Bone Valley. Rather, in the dragon race, one required thunderous methods that could subdue the group of dragons. Otherwise, there would be no decrease in such fights. On both sides of the road stood many Illumination Dragons. Every single one of them looked at Su Zimo with hostility and provocation. Su Zimo continued forward calmly. That's the outsider? He doesn't look anything special. Fufu, he has delicate features and a frail body. I can suppress him with a single finger. More and more Illumination Dragons gathered here. Before long, Su Zimo realized that he had entered the Primordial Divine Spring the moment he arrived. He did not know the layout of the Illumination Dragon's habitat, nor did he know where his lair was. Excuse me, where is my lair? Su Zimo came before an Illumination Dragon and asked with a friendly smile. Although the Illumination Dragon was only at the nascent soul realm, he was not afraid of Su Zimo at all. He merely sneered and rolled his eyes, ignoring the latter completely. Su Zimo was not annoyed. After taking a few steps, he came before another Illumination Dragon and asked with a smile, May I know where my lair is? This Illumination Dragon was at the Void Reversion realm. This meant that the two of them had a chance of fighting. Do you want to know? The Illumination Dragon smirked and pointed at his nose, saying coldly, Get past me first. The two of them were extremely close to one another. Su Zimo looked at the young Illumination Dragon before him quietly and shook his head gently with a soft sigh. You're too weak. The moment he said that, Su Zimo suddenly reached out. His movement was as fast as lightning without any warning. The Illumination Dragon had not expected Su Zimo to be so decisive and attack first despite being surrounded by a group of dragons. While he was in a daze, Su Zimo's palm had already landed on the top of his head and rubbed it gently. A tremendous amount of energy surged into his consciousness and the Illumination Dragon's eyes rolled back. His body went limp and he fainted on the spot, falling in Su Zimo's footsteps. Long Mo, how dare you? A roar sounded from the dragons. You're not convinced. Su Zimo swept his gaze at him. The Void Reversion Illumination Dragon was not afraid at all. He leaped into the air and transformed into a half-dragon with sharp claws and fangs. In a fight between dragons, very few would take on their half-dragon form right away. This also meant that the Illumination Dragon was wary and was prepared to unleash his full strength. Boom. Stomping down, Su Zimo rose from the ground and threw a punch at the Illumination Dragon in midair. The Illumination Dragon's gaze was ferocious as he grabbed towards Su Zimo's fist with one hand while his other dragon claw swiped towards Su Zimo's head. Su Zimo's eyes flashed with mockery and he did not dodge at all. Bang. Fist and palm collided. Crack, crack, crack. Immediately after, the sound of bones cracking could be heard in midair. The Illumination Dragon revealed a pained expression as he felt an incomparably terrifying power surge into his body. The first things to relent were his wrist and arm. Even with the protection of his dragon scales, the bones inside were already broken. Before his other dragon claw could touch Su Zimo's head, his entire body was sent flying by Su Zimo's punch. Even in midair, he spat out a mouthful of blood and fell to the ground, screaming. This time round, the dragons were stunned. Among them, some were strong while others were weak in combat. However, even the strongest expert would find it difficult to release such strength that could defeat an Illumination Dragon in his half-dragon form with a single punch. With that strength, he should have a chance to challenge the Hidden Dragon ranking, right? A weak voice sounded from the crowd. Hidden Dragon ranking. Su Zimo furrowed his brows slightly. The name sounded familiar, as though he had seen it somewhere before. After pondering for a moment, a thought flashed through his mind. On the central square of the Dragon Bone Valley, he seemed to have seen two gigantic ranking lists on his way to the mixed dragon habitat after coming out of the primordial divine spring. One of them was the Hidden Dragon ranking. There were 10 names of the dragon race written on it, and they belonged to different lineages. Even without anyone's introduction, he could roughly guess that the dragons on the Hidden Dragon ranking were definitely the strongest and youngest ones from the 5 lineages. In reality, Su Zimo's guess was not wrong. The 10 spots on the Hidden Dragon ranking were the 10 strongest dragons at the Void Reversion realm. The other ranking was the Heavenly Dragon ranking, corresponding to the 10 strongest dragon race beings at the Dharma characteristic realm. The 2 ranking lists were extremely valuable. The rankings would change at any moment as well. As long as someone could defeat the dragons above, they would replace them. Unsurprisingly, the young master of the 5 lineages would be the number 1 of the Heavenly Dragon ranking. Su Zimo glanced at it once, and his deepest impression was that there were 5 dragons on the Hidden Dragon ranking that came from the Blue Dragon lineage. Furthermore, the number 1 of the Hidden Dragon ranking and Heavenly Dragon ranking were both blue dragons. This also confirmed what Long Yen had told him before. The Blue Dragon was the leader among the 5 lineages. Chapter 1080 Long Yi. Chapter 1080, Long Yi. To be honest, Su Zimo did not care about those useless titles at the moment. At the very least, the top of the Golden Core Phenomenon ranking would be rewarded handsomely. However, there was nothing for the Hidden Dragon ranking and Heavenly Dragon ranking. It would only attract the constant challenges of the other dragons. Su Zimo only wanted to cultivate peacefully among the dragons. After entering the Dharma characteristic realm, one would be baptized by the ancestral dragon divine pillar and awaken their innate divine powers. Chaos had already appeared on Tianhuang mainland, and many signs indicated that there might be a huge change in the future. He had to raise his strength as soon as possible so that he could survive the upcoming changes. However, the wind would not stop even if the tree wanted peace. Right now, it was impossible for him to stay out of it. Not far away, a man in scarlet brocade robes walked over slowly with an extraordinary aura. The moment he arrived, the surrounding Illumination Dragons dispersed instinctively to create a path. Although this Illumination Dragon was also at the Void Reversion realm, he clearly had a high status in the Illumination Dragon lineage and was extremely authoritative. Brother Yi is here. Let's see what Long Mo can do now. Many Illumination Dragons looked at Su Zimo with gloating expressions. The brocade-robed man approached and frowned as he looked at the Illumination Dragon with the severed arm shrieking on the ground, as well as another unconscious dragon. He turned to Su Zimo. Su Zimo looked back with a calm expression. Unlike the other Illumination Dragons, the brocade-robed man did not show much hostility towards Su Zimo. Instead, he cupped his fist slightly and said in a deep voice, "I'm Long Yi." Su Zimo's heart skipped a beat. He had seen Long Ye's name before on the Hidden Dragon ranking, and he seemed to be ranked 5th. Su Zimo nodded and returned the greeting with cupped fists. "I've heard of you. It's normal for you to be ostracized by your clansmen when you've just arrived in the dragon race." Long Yi said indifferently, "I have some power within the dragon race. How about this? Apologize to these 2 clansmen and we'll forget about what happened today." Many Illumination Dragons protested when they heard that. "Brother Yi, that lad is way too arrogant." "That's right. He's only been here for a month and he already went to the Mixed Dragon region to show off. Upon his return, he injured 2 of our clansmen. We can't let this matter rest just like that. Brother Yi, destroy his arrogance so that he knows his place." Long Yi reached out and pressed down. The voices of the dragons gradually faded. Long Yi said, "Everyone, please give me some face. As long as he's willing to apologize sincerely, don't make things difficult for him today." Some of the Illumination dragons no longer spoke but looked at Su Zimo with hostility, feeling indignant. Long Imo helped the two of them up and apologize. "We'll let this matter pass." Long Yi commanded Su Zimo as though it was an order. Suddenly Su Zimo laughed. Although Long Yi seemed like he was helping him out, in reality, his request was unreasonable. There had never been a case of a victor apologizing to the loser in a fight between dragons. At the end of the day, Long Yi still did not view him as a dragon. Or rather, Long Yi was merely showing off his authority among the dragons while exerting dominance over an outsider like him. "Why should I apologize?" Su Zimo looked at Long Yi with a fake smile and asked instead. Long Yi turned his head slightly as though he had just met Su Zimo for the first time. With a thud, his eyes burned with flames. How ungrateful. Brother Yi, he doesn't want any face. Teach him a lesson. There's no need to use a sledgehammer to crack a nut. Let me do it. Behind Long Yi, an Illumination dragon could not hold it in any longer and charged out, prepared to fight Su Zimo. Long Yi extended his arm and stopped the Illumination dragon. He glared at Su Zimo and said coldly, "Long Imo, do you know who you're talking to?" "What's wrong?" Su Zimo smiled gently. "Is there a rule in the dragon race where the strong have to apologize to the weak?" Long Yi smiled as well. However, everyone could sense a suppressed rage in his smile. "You're just an outsider. I gave you this chance because I thought highly of you. Since you don't want it, don't blame me." The flames in Long Ye's eyes burned brighter. Seems like they were right. You truly don't know your place. Today I'll teach you a principle. Open your eyes in the dragon race. Not everyone is somebody you can provoke. Before he finished his sentence, Long Yi strode forward and swung his arm, smashing it towards Su Zimo's head. Swoosh. The arm was like a steel whip as the wind howled in its wake. Su Zimo narrowed his eyes slightly. As the fifth on the hidden dragon ranking, Long Yi was indeed not weak. The power he released was already rather terrifying. Of course, that power was not enough to threaten him. Su Zimo punched back at Long Ye's fist. Bang. The two fists collided. Su Zimo was motionless and his expression was normal. However, Long Yi shuddered. He felt a sharp pain surge from his fist into his body. He nearly lost control and cried out in pain. It was only now that he realized that Su Zimo was stronger than he had imagined. Splash. Long Yi channeled his bloodline and the sound of a tsunami could be heard from his body. The power of his bloodline flowed through his limbs and bones and the pain from his fist dissipated by more than half instantly. Tsunami blood. Su Zimo had encountered a dragon who had cultivated his bloodline to the tsunami level so quickly. It was definitely not a fluke that Long Yi was able to be on the hidden dragon ranking. Come on. Long Ye's eyes shone brightly as he roared, "I'll show you my true strength." He strode forward once more and charged towards Su Zimo. Bang. Boom. Boom. Standing on the spot, Su Zimo channeled his bloodline and the sound of a tsunami echoed from within his body. It was even more robust and majestic than the sound of Long Ye's bloodline. A commotion broke out among the dragons. Although they possessed the pure bloodline of the dragon race and were extremely strong, most of them had not cultivated to the tsunami blood realm. To think that this outsider with an impure bloodline would have cultivated to the tsunami blood realm. Boom. The two of them collided heavily like two ferocious beasts in human form. Flesh and blood collided while bones rubbed against each other. Blood chi surged and let out a terrifying sound. Right after, under countless gazes, a figure was sent flying. It was Long Yi, the fifth on the hidden dragon ranking. Long Yi crawled up from the ground swiftly. That bit of injury was negligible to him. However, this loss had completely enraged him. Roar. Long Yi roared at Su Zimo and charged forward once more. Bang, bang, bang. The two of them clashed continuously without any technique and fought purely with strength. Long Yi fell and stood up time and again. With the circulation of dragon blood within his body, those external injuries did not affect him much. However, the scene before them left the dragons dumbfounded. Nobody expected Su Zimo to be able to fight against Long Yi. Less than that, nobody expected Long Yi to be the one completely disadvantaged. Chapter 1081, New Ranked 5. Chapter 1081, New Ranked 5. Long Mo's bloodline is impure, but his melee combat strength is indeed strong. However, melee combat is only a part of combat strength. Long Mo is still far from being able to defeat Brother Yi. That's right. As long as Brother Yi uses the secret skill of our Illumination Dragon lineage, victory will be decided immediately. Many Illumination Dragons discussed softly. The secret skill of the Illumination Dragon lineage was the Illumination Dragon Eye. This secret skill was extremely difficult to cultivate and dangerous. Even in the Illumination Dragon lineage, there were very few people who could cultivate it successfully. One's combat strength would at least double if they could cultivate the Illumination Dragon Eye. In melee combat, the sudden release of a visual technique, furthermore one that was this terrifying, was almost destructive. Even if the other party could defend against it, he would definitely exhaust his blood chi and be flustered, unable to defend against the next attack. Long Yi charged forward continuously but was beaten back by Su Zimo repeatedly. The rage in his heart was burning hotter and hotter. Roar! He reared his head and roared into the skies, letting out a loud dragon roar. A series of crackling sounds came from his body as it expanded. He had already transformed into his half-dragon form. The wounds on Long Ye's body were healing at a visible speed. By transforming into a half-dragon, his speed and strength would increase exponentially to an even more terrifying level. Su Zimo was still motionless and had no intention of transforming into a dragon. His scarlet hair danced like flames and his eyes were deep and shone with a bright light. Long Yi charged forward once more and threw a punch. Su Zimo was fearless and did not dodge. He strode forward and returned a punch. Boom. The fists collided with a loud bang. A massive air current burst forth and heat waves surged. Even though Long Yi had transformed into a half-dragon, he did not have the slightest advantage. Long Yi instantly realized that he was definitely not Long Mo's match in melee combat. However, there was no hint of panic in his eyes. Instead, his right eye shone with a blinding light that resembled a blazing sun. Suddenly, a beam of light shot towards Su Zimo's head. Illumination Dragon Eye. A series of cries sounded from the dragons. Many Illumination Dragons were excited. That secret skill was the pride of the Illumination Dragon lineage. The release of the Illumination Dragon Eye meant that the outcome was decided. The reason why Long Yi could reach the 5th position on the Hidden Dragon ranking was not because of his melee combat strength, but because of his Dao visual technique. However, when the dragons saw what happened next, their expressions froze and they lost their voices instantly. Their eyes widened in disbelief. The moment Long Yi released the Illumination Dragon Eye, Su Zimo's right eye released a blazing beam as well. Furthermore, this beam of light had an additional layer of sharpness compared to Long Ye's beam of light, as though it could slice and tear everything. Illumination Dragon Eye. The dragons were dumbfounded. Long Mo was only an outsider and did not have the time or opportunity to cultivate in the dragon race. How could he know the Illumination Dragon Eye? Every single Illumination Dragon knew how difficult it was to cultivate this secret skill. However, this outsider with an impure bloodline had successfully cultivated it. What was even more frightening was that this outsider's Illumination Dragon Eye seemed to be even more powerful than the one released by Long Yi. How was that possible? Boom. The sound produced by the clash of visual techniques was even more terrifying. The two pillars of light shattered. Long Yi shrieked. Blood oozed from his right eye. Although he was not blinded, it still looked extremely terrifying. None of the dragons knew that apart from the secret skill of the dragon race, the Illumination Dragon Eye, Su Zimo's right eye possessed the Illumination Stone. The Illumination Stone transformed into a set of flying swords and released the Illumination Sword formation. Long Ye's Illumination Dragon Eye was no match for the combination of the two powers. Of course, the might of Long Ye's visual technique was already rather terrifying. If this was in the cultivation world, even Dharma-characteristic Dao Lords would have their eye sockets punctured by that attack. Long Mo, how dare you hurt me? Long Yi lunged forward once more with a ferocious expression. His glabella shone and an incomparably powerful spirit consciousness attack burst forth. Essence spirit secret skills were not allowed in the habitat of the dragon race. That was because once Essence Spirit secret skills were released, it would be difficult to stop the attacks and dragons could easily die. The situation would become irreversible. However, spirit consciousness attacks were allowed in fights between dragons. That was Long Ye's final trump card. He did not believe that after cultivating for so many years to the perfected void reversion realm, the strength of his spirit consciousness could not compare to an outsider who had just entered the void reversion realm. However, he did not realize what sort of opponent he was facing at all. Although Su Zimo had just entered the void reversion realm, the cultivation technique he cultivated was left behind by Daiyu. Even if he had just entered the void reversion realm and cultivated his yang spirit, this was not someone that Long Yi could challenge. Get lost. When he saw Long Yi pouncing over once more, Su Zimo revealed a hint of impatience as well. He gathered his spirit consciousness and counterattacked. If Long Yi's spirit consciousness was like a raging river, the spirit consciousness that Su Zimo released was like a surging tsunami. Boom. The two spirit consciousnesses collided. Long Yi's expression changed and he grunted. Blood drained from his face and he felt a sharp pain in his mind, almost fainting. In that split second of distraction, Su Zimo had already closed in and punched his chest. Bang. A terrifying power surged into his body. Long Yi could clearly sense that his chest had shattered and his heart had paused for a moment. He felt the world spin around him as he was sent flying far away. Finally, he landed heavily on the ground, his entire body aching. He was defeated. He was dragged down from the hidden dragon ranking by an outsider just like that. Lying in the mud, Long Yi looked at the gray skies with a dim gaze. Up till this point of his cultivation, he had fought against his clansmen countless times and experienced many losses as well. However, the blow this time round was way too great. Brother Yi. Brother Yi, are you alright? Many illumination dragons ran over with worried expressions. Their voices sounded extremely distant in his ears. Sigh. Long Yi sighed gently and closed his eyes. He felt conflicted, neither happy nor worried. It was sad to lose. However, he knew that from this day forth, the Illumination Dragon lineage was about to rise. Two Illumination Dragons carried Long Yi and ran to the back rapidly, preparing to find someone to treat the latter's injuries. The surrounding dragons did not disperse for a long time. Many Illumination Dragons looked at Su Zimo with reverence in their eyes. At that moment, no Illumination Dragon jumped out to accuse Su Zimo of being an outsider. There was no Illumination Dragon to berate him as a bastard with an impure bloodline either. As Long Yen had said, strength reigned supreme in the dragon race. If he wanted to gain the respect and recognition of the dragons here, he could only rely on his own fists. On the central square, the gigantic hidden dragon ranking changed. The fifth line of the hidden dragon ranking, Long Yi, Illumination Dragon, suddenly moved down. Many dragons would gather in the central square every day. The changes on the hidden dragon ranking attracted the attention of many dragons. The fifth on the hidden dragon ranking has changed? Who defeated Long Yi? Could it be Long Shi? I heard that she just went to the Illumination Dragon habitat. Just as the dragons were discussing, 4 words appeared on the 5th row of the hidden dragon ranking. Long Mo, Illumination Dragon. Chapter 1082 Frost Dragon Breath. Chapter 1082, Frost Dragon Breath. Long Mo? The Illumination Dragon lineage? When did such an impressive person appear? Why haven't I heard of him before? Some people looked confused. Strange, why does this Long Mo sound familiar? The dragons discussed fervently as they pointed at the hidden dragon ranking. Suddenly, a cry sounded from the dragons. I've got it. A dragon said, this Long Mo is the outsider who joined the Illumination Dragon lineage a month ago. Ah, it's him. I think he just caused a huge ruckus at the mixed dragon's side. To think that he would have such combat strength to defeat Long Yi. I heard that the elders of the Illumination Dragon lineage intend to matchmake him with Long Shi. Long Shi has already charged over. Her nickname is Tyrant Dragon, how can she endure something like that? That Long Mo must be prepared to suffer. Someone gloated. Something's wrong. Right then, a dragon pointed to the hidden dragon ranking and said, Long Shi is ranked 8th on the hidden dragon ranking. That seems to be beneath Long Mo. It was only now that the dragons realized that the hidden dragon ranking had changed. Long Mo's combat strength was even stronger than Long Shi. If that was the case, the consequences of Long Shi charging over would be. The dragons exchanged glances and ran towards the Illumination Dragon habitat tacitly. After defeating Long Yi, Su Zimo looked at the respectful gazes of the dragons and finally relaxed. This turned out well. It was better than having to fight them one by one. Suppressing the fifth on the hidden dragon ranking could be considered as a permanent solution and save him a lot of trouble. He was about to look for a random dragon and ask where his dragon lair was when he felt a commotion behind him. "Where's Long Mo?" A loud voice sounded, causing Su Zimo's eardrums to hurt. Normally speaking, the Illumination Dragon was of the fire attribute and its habitat had an extremely high temperature. However, at this moment, the surrounding temperature had plummeted. When the surrounding dragons saw who it was, their expressions changed and they retreated instinctively. Frowning, Su Zimo turned around. Not far away, a few dragons charged over with huge strides in an aggressive manner. Their leader was a young woman dressed in tight white robes that accentuated her tall figure perfectly. The woman's face was fair and her features were well defined. Combined together, she gave off a unique sense of beauty. However, the twin peaks on her chest were majestic and strikingly glorious. "Who is Long Mo? Stand out." When she arrived, the woman suddenly opened her mouth and roared. The woman was definitely a beauty. However, her voice was truly frightening. At the very least, when Su Zimo was unprepared for it, he jolted. At that moment, the dragons were scattered all around and Su Zimo stood in the middle of the space, looking extremely out of place. The woman shifted her gaze and caught sight of Su Zimo right away. She arrived before him in 3 strides. She was half a head taller than Su Zimo. "Tell me where Long Mo is." Upon closer inspection, the woman's eyes were deep and shone brightly like 2 sapphires. Su Zimo was secretly troubled. The dragon before him clearly did not belong to the Illumination Dragon lineage. Listening to the discussions around him, it seemed like the woman was from the Hornless Dragon lineage. He had just arrived at the Dragon Bone Valley and came out of the Primordial Divine Spring. He truly did not know how he got involved with this woman from the Hornless Dragon lineage. Su Zimo could tell that the woman was hostile. However, he still smiled gently. "I'm Long Mo. You are." The woman was stunned. A hint of shock flashed through her gem-like eyes and she looked a little dazed. It did not match her fierce expression earlier on. However, the woman reacted very quickly. Clenching her fist, she twisted her neck and said through gritted teeth, "All right, how dare you?" Su Zimo was confused. He had no idea what he had done to render that remark. Could Long Yi be the Dao companion of this beauty from the Hornless Dragon race? If this was Long Ye's wife, the reason why she came knocking was because he had beaten up her husband. "You're Long Ye's Dao companion?" Su Zimo tried asking. Poof. A stifled laughter sounded from the dragons. "Long Mo is in trouble now. How dare you tease the tyrant dragon like that? How ferocious." Many dragons revealed gloating expressions. "Stop pretending." The Hornless Dragon woman ground her pearly white teeth and her eyes seemed to have turned cold as she said icily, "How dare you propose marriage to me, you outsider with an impure bloodline? You must have a death wish." Propose? Su Zimo was stunned. He had just come out of the Primordial Divine Spring. How could he have proposed a marriage? Suddenly, the Hornless Dragon woman opened her mouth and spat out a white mist at Su Zimo. The surrounding temperature plummeted and a layer of frost even formed on the ground. Dragon breath. Every dragon was born with the ability. Of course, different dragon breaths had different strengths. The dragon breath of this Hornless Dragon woman was frost. While Su Zimo was distracted, the Hornless Dragon woman opened her mouth and exhaled. A fragrance wafted over. Immediately after, a layer of frost covered his head, scarlet hair, face, body and limbs. Thereafter, ice formed at a visible speed. In the blink of an eye, Su Zimo had already vanished and a human-shaped ice sculpture appeared on the spot. This is bad. If he's frozen by the tyrant dragon's breath, his organs will be severely injured. He will take at least half a month to recover. The dragons discussed without any sympathy. Umph. The Hornless Dragon tapped the ice sculpture before her gently and sneered, "Continue pretending. This is just a taste of the suffering you'll receive." Crack, crack, crack. Suddenly, a series of cracks sounded in the void. The Hornless Dragon woman was stunned. Right after, under countless gazes, a crack appeared on the human-shaped ice sculpture and expanded rapidly. In the blink of an eye, the entire ice sculpture was covered. Boom. There was a deafening sound. A figure walked out with surging blood chi and scarlet hair. He exuded a torrential aura and glared at the hornless dragon woman with a burning gaze. Pust! The dragons gasped. He was actually fine after being struck by the frost dragon breath of the hornless dragon woman. The hornless dragon woman reacted quickly. Her blood chi surged and she exuded a cold aura as she charged towards Su Zimo. Bang! Although the hornless dragon woman charged forward rapidly, she rebounded even swifter. She had just charged forward when she was punched back by Su Zimo. The hornless dragon woman rolled on the ground a few times before standing up. Panting slightly, she grit her teeth and said, "How dare you hit me?" Before she could finish her sentence, her vision blurred and a scarlet shadow flashed. She was sent flying once more and landed heavily on the ground with a bang. Roar! The hornless dragon woman was enraged and roared. A series of crackling sounds came from her body as her body expanded. The woman's clothes burst and silver-white dragon scales appeared on her body, lined tightly like sparkling snowflakes. Chapter 1083, A Huge Misunderstanding. Chapter 1083, A Huge Misunderstanding. As a female paragon of the dragon race, Long Shi had a fiery temperament. Coupled with her powerful combat strength, she ran amok in the Dragon Bone Valley and almost no one dared to provoke her. She was about to break through to the Dharma characteristic realm, to think that she would be suppressed by an outsider. Furthermore, this outsider even dared to openly tease her. She did not care about the marriage. Her husband had to be an unprecedented five-clawed divine dragon like the number one of the heavenly dragon ranking, Brother Long Tsong. How was this outsider worthy? Dragonification. Without hesitation, Long Shi transformed into her half-dragon form and prepared to tear the intruder apart. Su Zimo did not give Long Shi much time to react. He strode forward and reached out with his hand, slapping down heavily on her back. Under normal circumstances, that palm should have landed on Long Shi's back. However, after transforming into her half-dragon form, Long Shi's body expanded and elongated. Su Zimo's palm was no longer on Long Shi's back, but her peach-round butt. This change happened in an instant. By the time Su Zimo realized it, it was already too late and he retracted his strength hurriedly. Piak. Although Su Zimo had indeed retracted most of his strength, he could not help but slap Long Shi's but with a crisp sound. Her flesh trembled. The entire battlefield fell silent instantly. Many dragons were dumbfounded. Heavens, what did Long Mo do? He's actually spanking the tyrant dragon. Spank? He was clearly fondling it. The dragons roared internally. Long Shi had just transformed into a half-dragon when she was struck by this. Instantly, her entire body stiffened and her fair face flushed red. Su Zimo sighed internally with a helpless expression. He could even hear Long Shi grinding her teeth. This was a huge misunderstanding. There was no possibility of an explanation. There was no way he could just tell her that he had spanked her on the butt by accident. Such an explanation would only cause this wild dragoness to go berserk. "I'm going to kill you." A few words escaped from the gaps of Long Shi's teeth. Her tone was cold and the surrounding temperature had already dropped to a freezing point. She had never suffered such humiliation before. Blood chi burst forth from Long Shi's body as she struggled to stand up and fight Su Zimo. Su Zimo was thinking about how to deal with the situation before him when he sensed Long Shi's actions. Before he could retract his palm, he instinctively pressed down. Piak. Long Shi had just stood up when that hateful palm landed on her but again. Thump. This time round she was pinned on the spot and could not move at all. The dragons were in an uproar. Long Mo had touched it again. You. Long Shi looked embarrassed. Su Zimo cursed internally. He moved his palm and slapped the back of Long Shi's head, knocking her unconscious. No matter what, he had to knock out the dragoness first. Long Shi's blood chi gradually calmed down. The silver-white scales on her body gradually faded as well. Her clothes were already torn. With the fading of her dragon scales, her fair skin that shone with a charming luster were naturally revealed. A slender and perfect body was about to be exposed to the dragons. Gulp. Gulp. Sounds of gulping could be heard from the dragons. Countless dragons widened their eyes in anticipation. All of a sudden, a set of clothes covered and concealed her perfect body. Ugh. A sigh sounded from the dragons at the same time, looking rather spectacular. It was Su Zimo who took out his clothes in time to cover Long Shi, whose naked body was almost seen by everybody. The dragons glared at him in anger. Although the dragons were pissed about this, they could not bring themselves to say it. Su Zimo stood up and looked at the few hornless dragons not far away. He cupped his fists. "I'm sorry, I was a little rude earlier on. There must be some misunderstanding here. Please help me take care of this, lady?" The few hornless dragons were slightly stunned. They were all dragons and had never heard anyone speak in such a polite manner. When a hornless dragon heard Su Zimo's interesting words, he was the first to react and pursed his lips into a smile. "Actually, logically speaking, what you did can't be considered rude." That's right, that's right. Another hornless dragon smiled. "It's nothing much for you guys to touch one another given your relationship. However, don't do it in front of so many people next time." Hee hee. The other few hornless dragons chuckled as well. Nobody noticed that the blush on Long Shi's face deepened further as she laid motionlessly on the ground. Su Zimo rubbed his forehead gently. There was no way he could explain this anymore. "We'll be leaving now." The few hornless dragons helped Long Shi up and waved goodbye to Su Zimo, their attitudes much better than before. Su Zimo was still confused, not understanding how he got involved with this hornless dragon woman. He pondered for a moment and still had no clue. As such, he was prepared to cast this matter aside for the time being and cultivate first. The moment he turned around, a dragon approached him and even gave him a thumbs up. "Brother Imo, my name is Long Can. You can call me Aken." The illumination dragon named Long Can was extremely friendly. "Brother Imo, I know where your dragon lair is. I'll take you there." "All right." Su Zimo froze momentarily before nodding. Prior to this, he asked consecutively, but none of the dragons bothered with him. But now, before he could ask, a dragon had already stood out. In the dragon race, strength reigned supreme indeed. Su Zimo thought that he had obtained the acknowledgement of the dragons because he defeated Long Yi, who was ranked 5th on the hidden dragon ranking. However, in reality, the true reason why he obtained the acknowledgement of the dragons was because he touched Long Shi's butt. Furthermore, he did it twice. In the eyes of the dragons, this was much more impressive than the hidden dragon ranking. As Su Zimo followed Long Can, many dragons around him looked at him with admiration. Some of them even took the initiative to greet and give him a thumbs up. "Who was that hornless dragon earlier on? How is she related to me?" After a moment, Su Zimo could not help but ask. "Brother Imo, you really don't know?" Long Can asked. When he saw Su Zimo shake his head, Long Can explained, "Sister, she was initially engaged to Brother Yen before she was born. However, after she grew up, her temper was too explosive and the two of them no longer fancied one another. At that time they caused a huge ruckus and ended on bad terms. As such, the matter was left unsettled." Long Yen naturally referred to the child of the red-headed ghost. Long Can continued, "Brother Imo, the reason why you came to our illumination dragon lineage is to replace Brother Yen. As such, the few elders went over to the hornless dragon lineage and proposed the marriage. Given Sister Shi's pride, she naturally wouldn't agree to it. That's why she charged over to teach you a lesson. To think that, hee." At that point, Long Can winked at Su Zimo and smiled. "Brother Imo, if you can subdue Sister Shi, the illumination dragon lineage will definitely acknowledge you as their young master. Sister Shi might have a bad temper, but she's not a bad person. Long Can even put in a good word for Long Shi." When he heard that, Su Zimo realized the reason behind things. He clenched his fists and gritted his teeth. Those old fogies. Initially, this trouble had nothing to do with him. It was the elders of the illumination dragon lineage who provoked the tyrant dragon by proposing marriage. Chapter 1084, Number 1 of the Hidden Dragon Ranking. Chapter 1084, Number 1 of the Hidden Dragon Ranking. This matter was probably not over yet. Su Zimo did not intend to think about it anymore. As long as he returned to his dragon lair, Long Shi wouldn't be able to barge in even if she came knocking again. He asked in a low voice, "By the way, where are the cultivation techniques of the illumination dragon lineage? I intend to take a look." "Follow me." Long Can led Su Zimo forward and arrived before a grand hall. After passing through the check by the two guards at the entrance of the hall, the two of them entered. The hall was not big and there were not many cultivation techniques and secret manuals inside. There weren't even as many as Ethereal Peak. For a race like the Dragon Race, even if they did not cultivate any cultivation techniques, their strength would only increase with age. Cultivation techniques were only supplementary to the Dragon Race. Su Zimo was not interested in the cultivation techniques of the Dragon Race either. Even the top cultivation techniques of the Dragon Race could not compare to the mystic classic of the 12 Demon Kings of the Great Wilderness. His only motive for coming here was to crack the mysteries of the Barondermic art in the Yang Spirit section and the Essence Spirit secret skill. Su Zimo casually flipped through a few ancient books and his eyes lit up. Bingo! It was just as he had guessed. The ancient and strange symbols in the Barondermic art and Essence Spirit secret skill were actually words of the Dragon Race. Since Su Zimo did not understand the Dragon Race language, he naturally could not understand the secret behind them. After confirming that, he copied some of the most basic ancient books in the hall and tried to learn the Dragon Race language as soon as possible to cultivate Baron and the Essence Spirit secret skill. Su Zimo left the main hall and bid farewell to Long Kim before returning to his dragon lair to cultivate in seclusion. At the same time, the two battles at the Illumination Dragon habitat spread through the entire Dragon Bone Valley at the fastest speed. Long Yi was ranked 5th on the Hidden Dragon ranking. Normally his defeat should have been the focus. However, in the following period of time, the dragons discussed the battle between Su Zimo and Long Shi. Almost no one cared if Long Yi was ranked 5th or 6th on the Hidden Dragon ranking. The Blue Dragon Habitat. What? A blue dragon frowned slightly and said coldly with rage surging in his eyes, "Someone dared to bully Long Shi? Brother Long Yang, I heard that it's the new Long Mo. Not only did he bully Sister Shi, he even spanked her." Another blue dragon whispered. The blue dragon named Long Yang had a slender figure and long green hair. He had a gentle face and exquisite features. Although he was a man, he was even more beautiful than women. If Long Yang were to change into female clothes, he might even draw attention away from Long Shi. He truly doesn't know his limits. Long Yang stood up slowly and walked outside. A gentle look flashed through his eyes as he said in a low voice, "I have to go comfort Sister Long Shi. She's impatient by nature and might explode from anger." Before long, Long Yang arrived at the Hornless Dragon lineage's area. The moment he arrived outside Long Shi's residence, he heard a series of low growls. Before long, a few hornless dragons walked out with wretched expressions. They were scolded badly by the enraged Long Shi. "Sister Long Shi, it's me." Long Yang stood outside the cave and said gently, "I heard that someone bullied you. I'm here to see you." Thud, thud, thud. A series of heavy footsteps sounded. Before long, Long Shi's figure appeared in the cave. A bright, bedazzling smile appeared on Long Yang's face. Long Shi glared at Long Yang with bloodshot eyes and gritted her teeth. "Get lost, you sissy." The smile on Long Yang's face froze. There were many hornless dragons roaming around nearby. When they heard that, the hornless dragons grinned and were secretly alarmed. Although Long Yang was a man, he was even more feminine and beautiful than women. Coupled with his gentle voice, many people had bullied him since he was young and called him a sissy. However, later on, no one dared to say those words in front of Long Yang anymore. As Long Yang grew up and endured the humiliation, he cultivated continuously and fought with others. Although he was getting more beautiful, his strength was also getting stronger. Right now, he was already number 1 on the Hidden Dragon ranking. In the Dragon Bone Valley, apart from Long Shi, almost all Void Reversion dragons were taught a lesson by him. This was how Long Shi was like. If it was any other dragon, they would definitely be skinned alive if they dared to say those words. Long Yang was silent for a moment before smiling suddenly. "Sister Long Shi, I know that you're angry. However, don't worry, I'll teach that Long Mo a lesson for you." "I don't need you." Long Shi harumphed coldly. "This is my own matter. I'll deal with it myself. Long Yang, you're even prettier than me. Why are you always pestering me? Don't bother me anymore." Long Shi cursed angrily and turned to enter the cave. Long Yang was not annoyed. He lowered his head slightly and smiled gently, murmuring in a soft voice, "Sister Long Shi, don't be angry. I'll bring Long Mo's head to see you and let you vent your anger." Although Long Yang was smiling, there was a sinister killing intent in his eyes. An outsider with an impure bloodline. Even if he's killed, it's nothing much. He sneered coldly and shook his head before turning to leave. Naturally, Su Zimo, who was cultivating in his own dragon lair, did not know that he had inexplicably made a mortal enemy after just a month in the dragon race. Furthermore, he had yet to meet this person. Or rather, even if he knew, he wouldn't care. At that moment, Su Zimo was completely immersed in the Yang spirit section. When he truly learned the words of the dragon race and looked at the barren dermic art and essence spirit secret skill again, he truly understood the profoundness of that dermic art. He had just truly experienced the terror of the Yang spirit section. Initially, when Su Zimo released the barren dermic art, it was a huge area with him as the center like a swamp. Be it friend or foe, all living beings in the swamp would be corroded by the barren dermic art. But now, a ball of gray mist appeared in Su Zimo's palm, rolling and changing with a strange aura. The mist seemed to contain the secrets of heaven and earth and the supreme truths of the great Tao. This was the true barren, it was unbounded and could be changed at will. In the past, even at the center of barren, the reduction in lifespan was only 100 years of breath. At the edge of barren, the lifespan reduction was even slower and almost negligible. But now, any living being that came into contact with the mist in Su Zimo's palm would have their lifespans reduced at the rate of 500 years per breath. After comprehending the secret of barren, it became 5 times stronger than before. This was a qualitative leap. A void reversion had a lifespan of 5,000 years. 500 years in a single breath meant that even void reversions with 5,000 years of lifespan would not be able to last more than 10 breaths under the envelopment of barren. Su Zimo waved his hand and the fog dissipated. After comprehending the dragon race's language, the power of barren increased tremendously, and that was secondary. The true gain was still the essence of the Yang spirit section. The essence spirit secret skill. Chapter 1085, Settling Once and for All. Chapter 1085, Settling Once and for All. Half a year later. Dragon Bone Valley Illumination Dragon Habitat. In a dark and warm cave, 2 beams of light suddenly lit up like 2 burning flames. Under the illumination of the 2 flames, the outline of a figure gradually became clearer. It was Su Zimo, who had been in seclusion for half a year. He heaved a sigh of relief and the flames in his eyes gradually retracted before turning invisible. The entire cave abode returned to darkness once more. He had gained a lot in the past 6 months. It was not only his comprehension of the barren dermic art and essence spirit secret skill. Even his illumination dragon eye had changed. Initially, there was an illumination stone in his right eye. However, after half a year of cultivation, the illumination stone had already disappeared. To be precise, it was fused into his right eye. Be it the illumination sword formation or the illumination dragon eye, they were secret skills comprehended through the illumination stone. But now, the 2 secret skills had fused together in Su Zimo's body. The visual technique could no longer be considered as the illumination dragon eye. The power released by the visual technique did not only possess the heat of the illumination dragon eye, it also had the sharpness of the illumination sword formation. The visual technique had become the true illumination eye. Su Zimo stood up slowly. For the past 6 months he could feel the changes in his body. Without the restriction of the black-haired essence spirit, he was almost no different from any other dragon. He cultivated the mystic classic of the 12 demon kings of the great wilderness day and night, and his strength rose daily. This was the strength of a dragon. As long as he continued to grow, the power within his body would continue to rise. Coupled with the augmentation of the mystic classic of the 12 demon kings of the great wilderness, Su Zimo's cultivation speed was even faster and he had almost no bottlenecks at the void reversion realm. Su Zimo wanted to reach the peak of void reversion as soon as possible. At the peak of the void reversion realm, one could receive the baptism of the ancestral dragon divine pillar and enter the Dharma characteristic realm to comprehend the innate divine powers of the dragon race. He would be able to truly protect himself using this true body of the dragon race once he advanced to the Dharma characteristic realm. Of course, there was something else that Su Zimo anticipated within his heart. In his memories, everything from the mystic classic of the 12 demon kings of the great wilderness ended at the Yang spirit section without any words thereafter. However, he had a feeling that things were not that simple. The mystic classic of the 12 demon kings of the great wilderness originally had 12 demon kings. However, even with the divine dragon included, there were only 8 demon kings revealed in his bloodline phenomenon. In that case, there should still be 4 demon kings that had yet to appear. He wanted to enter the Dharma characteristic realm as soon as possible and see if there was anything left in the mystic classic of the 12 demon kings of the great wilderness. Su Zimo stood up. After half a year of seclusion, he intended to check on Solitary Cloud. The moment he left his lair, he saw many dragons lingering outside. Apart from illumination dragons, there were also some blue, horned, hornless and winged dragons. He's out. He's out. Hurry and inform Brother Yang. Keep watch here. I'll go right now. When some of the dragons saw Su Zimo leave the lair, they exclaimed softly. Some of them turned and left, disappearing quickly. Su Zimo did not mind and walked towards the habitat of the mixed dragon lineage. Before long he caught sight of Solitary Cloud. Solitary Cloud had changed even more after half a year. After Solitary Cloud's heart was shattered by Diin, he had a new heart reconstructed in the primordial divine spring. In reality, the heart was no different from a dragon's heart. Half a year ago, he was bullied by many mixed dragons and did not have time to cultivate. Because of that, the dragon heart could not show its strength either. But now, after half a year of cultivation, his aura had changed drastically and was extremely similar to a dragon's. At the very least, Solitary Cloud no longer felt any pressure in front of flood dragons, rain dragons and other mixed dragons. Dragon blood was already flowing through his body. He was only missing an opportunity to transform into a dragon. Su Zimo was delighted to see Solitary Cloud undergo such a change. After chatting for a while, Su Zimo stood up and bid farewell. Before long, a group of dragons walked over. The leader of the dragons had a head full of black hair and was extremely beautiful. He was even more beautiful than the Longshi that Su Zimo had seen before. However, the dragon's gaze was somewhat sinister as he glared at Su Zimo coldly with an unfriendly expression. Here comes trouble. Su Zimo sighed internally. He did not know how this dragoness was related to Longshi, if she was the latter's elder or younger sister. You're Long Mo? The green-robed blue dragon in the lead blocked Su Zimo's path and asked coldly. Su Zimo nodded. Compared to Longshi, this female dragon looked much more normal. Her voice was pleasant and she did not have a loud voice like Longshi. I'm Long Yang. The green-robed blue dragon said indifferently before pausing, as though he was waiting for Su Zimo to reveal some fear and reverence. Long Yang, number 1 on the hidden dragon ranking. No one in the dragon race would be indifferent to that name. Half a year ago, Su Zimo had chanced upon the hidden dragon ranking. However, for the past half a year, he had been focused on researching the dragon race's language and had long forgotten about the hidden dragon ranking. When he heard the name Long Yang, he was stunned for a moment and was a little lost. Su Zimo pondered for a moment before cupping his fists. Greetings, Miss Long Yang. The moment he said that, the entire place fell silent. The dragons gathered around him widened their mouths and gasped, looking at Su Zimo as though he was a dead man. Although Long Yang was beautiful, he was a man. Everyone in the dragon race knew that this was a taboo for him. In the past, there was a dragon who mocked him in his face and was forced to enter the dragon blood battlefield by him. At the risk of being severely injured, he killed that dragon directly. Ever since then, no one in the dragon race dared to trigger this taboo. But now, Su Zimo's casual remark was equivalent to touching Long Yang's reverse scale. Long Yang's expression turned cold instantly. When Su Zimo saw the reactions of the surrounding dragons, he realized that he might have said something wrong. However, he could not figure out the reason behind it. Since it was a woman before him, Su Zimo did not wish to be entangled with her. He cupped his fists once more and said sincerely, Miss Long Yang, this is my first time here. If I have somehow offended you, please forgive me. Although he was sincere, his words were extremely piercing to Long Yang. Cut the crap and head to the dragon blood battlefield. Long Yang grit his teeth. I'll take your life today. Su Zimo frowned. Even now he was still confused. This was his first time meeting Long Yang. How did it escalate to the point of the dragon blood battlefield? According to Uncle Yin, they could fight to the death in the dragon blood battlefield. Even if they died, no one would interfere. Long Yang glared at Su Zimo coldly before turning to leave, heading straight for the dragon blood battlefield. In the dragon race, unless one was in their own dragon lair, they had no right to refuse a challenge. Su Zimo pondered for a moment and could not figure it out. However, he still followed with a calm expression. he had experienced too many life and death battles. The dragons were excited and headed towards the dragon blood battlefield. Passing by the central square, Su Zimo looked up and finally saw Long Yang's name on the first row of the Hidden Dragon ranking. Number 1 of the Hidden Dragon ranking. Su Zimo smiled gently and murmured, "That's good as well. Once and for all, there shouldn't be any more trouble after this battle." Chapter 1086, Suppression. Chapter 1086, Suppression. Sister Shi, Sister Shi. A hornless dragon ran in front of Long Shi and panted slightly. Long Yang went to look for Long Emo and the two of them are going to fight to the death in the dragon blood battlefield. Ah. Long Shi's expression changed slightly as she frowned deeply in deep thought. Sister Shi, this can be considered a good thing. It's Long Mo's fault for bullying you previously. The hornless dragon said in a testing manner. What do you know? Long Shi stomped her feet and turned to run over. The news of Long Yang and Long Emo entering the Dragon Blood battlefield spread rapidly throughout the entire Dragon Bone Valley. Almost all the dragons that were not in seclusion ran over to watch the battle. Who do you guys think will win this battle? That goes without saying. Long Yang is number 1 on the Hidden Dragon ranking while Long Emo is number 5. Furthermore, I heard that he only just entered the Void Reversion realm. That's right. Rather than asking who will win, it's better to ask how long Long Emo can last. I heard that Long Emo was the one who had a death wish and triggered Long Yang's taboo. Before Long Yang and Long Emo arrived, many dragons were already gathered around the battlefield in a clamor. Before long the dragons dispersed. Long Yang walked over slowly with a dark expression and ascended the blood-stained dragon blood battlefield. Su Zimo followed behind indifferently. The battlefield was vast and reeked of blood. The two of them were in a face-off. Long Yang, get down. I don't need you to stand up for me. Suddenly, a loud roar sounded from beneath the battlefield. Long Shi appeared and shouted at Long Yang. Long Yang glanced sideways and shook his head. Sister Long Shi, this has nothing to do with you. Long Emo is the one who has a death wish. Long Yang, you. Long Shi was speechless. Under normal circumstances, in theory, she should be happy that Long Yang was standing out to help her teach Long Emo a lesson. Even if Long Emo died, it would have nothing to do with her. However, for some reason she did not wish for a life and death battle between the two of them. More and more dragons were gathering here. Long Yang said indifferently, if you have any last wishes you can say them. I'll complete them for you. Su Zimo burst into laughter and shook his head. I don't have any last wishes. It's fine as long as you don't disappoint me. I haven't had a chance to stretch my muscles properly since coming here. Arrogant. Those words sounded extremely arrogant to the dragons. A series of boos sounded from the dragons. Many dragons sneered. However, Long Yang did not laugh. He suddenly realized that Long Emo was way too calm. Long Yang retracted his contempt and narrowed his eyes. Suddenly, he exerted strength with both feet and transformed into a green beam of light, charging towards Su Zimo in the blink of an eye. Clang. Clang. Long Yang extended his palm and bent his fingers slightly, flicking out sharp fingernails that shone with a cold glint. A powerful suction force burst forth from the palm and enveloped Su Zimo entirely. Su Zimo was surprised. Long Yang's move was an extremely brilliant melee combat technique. Most dragons relied on their physical bodies to fight in close combat. But now, not only did Long Yang reveal his powerful physique and terrifying burst power, he even released this brilliant melee combat technique. Instantly he took the advantage. Unhurriedly, Su Zimo twisted his palm into a saber and slashed towards the void not far away. Haha. What's that? Long Emo is already flustered. The dragons below burst into laughter when they saw Su Zimo's move. However, the laughter of the dragons stopped right after. As Su Zimo's palm descended, a gigantic ocean vortex appeared on the battlefield and a series of terrifying explosions sounded, as though it could engulf all living beings within and drown them completely. Vortex stance. Using his palm as a saber, he released the saber intent of the sea calming manual. Long Yang's expression changed slightly. The suction force that burst forth from his palm dissipated instantly against the terrifying vortex and his body swayed unsteadily. Splash. Long Yang roared and released his blood chi, causing the sound of a tsunami to echo from his body. Tsunami blood. It was as though a tsunami had formed within Long Yang's body as well, matching the vortex that surrounded him. Instantly his figure stabilized. Swoosh. Long Yang's palm continued grabbing towards Su Zimo's face. Su Zimo lamented internally. Up till this point of his cultivation he had only encountered 2 cultivators in the cultivation world who had cultivated to the realm of tsunami blood. To think that the 2 dragons he had encountered in less than a year after arriving in the dragon race would have reached this realm. Without hesitation Su Zimo released his blood chi as well. Bang. Boom. Boom. The sound of a tsunami could be heard. Su Zimo strode forward and punched Long Yang's palm fiercely. Bang. Suddenly the 2 immense forces collided and their blood chi corroded. It was as though 2 gigantic tsunamis had crashed, causing a loud bang. Long Yang's expression changed slightly as he retreated. Su Zimo took a step back as well. This was the first dragon that could force him to take a step back in the Dragon Bone Valley. All right. Su Zimo burst into laughter and strode forward once more, charging towards Long Yang. Long Yang frowned. This collision caused his aura to pause and he could not advance any further. However, Long Imo did not seem to be affected at all. In reality, Su Zimo cultivated the tidal manual and his blood chi surged endlessly like a tsunami wave after wave. There was almost no pause at all. With the help of tidal might, his strength continued to rise. Su Zimo punched out once more with a ferocious might. Long Yang did not evade or dodge. His blood chi burst forth as he countered with a punch. Boom. The 2 fists collided. Su Zimo took another step back. However, Long Yang staggered 3 steps back. Before he could catch his breath, a figure flashed before him and Su Zimo charged forward once more with another punch. Boom. Long Yang retreated once more after receiving the blow. Bang. 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 Su Zimo advanced continuously and rained down punches one after another. His strength rose continuously like a peerless war god with a torrential aura. His attacks were as dense as rain but they were extremely ferocious and did not give Long Yang any chance to catch his breath. Long Yang could only retreat repeatedly in the face of the attack. His expression turned ugly. He did not even have the strength to retaliate against such an attack. It was impossible for him to retreat, let alone retaliate. Right now he was completely caught up in Su Zimo's attacks. He could not push forward. However, he could not retreat either. He could only defend continuously until his energy was depleted. This was a vicious cycle. Or rather, he would not be able to last till then. A faint taste of blood had already appeared in Long Yang's mouth after the series of head-on collisions. His teeth had already loosened from the shock. The surroundings of the battlefield were dead silent. The dragons were dumbfounded. The scene before them had completely exceeded their expectations. The number 1 of the hidden dragon ranking, Long Yang from the blue dragon lineage, was suppressed by an outsider with an impure bloodline. You're tuning in to the Han Lee's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.